republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Moore.
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Present.
Councilman Iacilli.
Present.
Councilman Pell.
Present.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
Thank you. I move to accept the minutes of the town board meeting from July 9th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please read the communications?
Certainly. I have received in the town clerk's office the following communications. We have received public notices from the U.S. Department of Energy, New York State Department of Public Service, New York State Liquor Authority 30-day advance notice to local municipalities from the listed entity, New York State Office of Cannabis Management notification to local municipality from the listed entity, from the town of East Hampton, public hearing notice, from the village of Sag Harbor, notices of adoption, emails, letters, and land use applications have been received regarding the following: Hampton Bay's pattern book and proposed floating zone, Mecox Bay watershed management plan, parking restrictions proposed for Mountain Laurel Lane, Tuckahoe, town newsletter and battery energy storage,
Much better.
zoning board of appeals application for 24 Old Fort Lane in Southampton. Bid and request for proposals were received on July 3rd. We received bid for Mercedes-Benz Sprinter cargo van for code enforcement. Bid for Hampton Bay's bike lane and multi-use trails for municipal works. On July 18th, an RFP was received for professional engineering design services for the Watermill Fish Passage from the trustees. And the following report from the town comptroller was filed for the June 2024 monthly financial report. And that concludes the communications for this meeting's agenda.
Thank you. I have 7 walk-ons that I will read now, and we'll vote on whether we'll add them to the agenda. The first is Town Board Resolution ID number 46825, which is a resolution to adopt an amending Code 24, Article 2014, on the Central Pine Barrens. Town Board Resolution ID number 46992, a resolution setting a public hearing to consider amending the Town Code Chapter 330-185 as it relates to the procedures for the change of zone applications. Town Board Resolution ID number 46997 to promote Sergeant Carl Schottenhamel to the rank of Lieutenant in Southampton Town Police Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 47005, which is a notice of public hearing to consider amending Town Code Chapter 312, Vehicles and Traffic, amending and adding parking prohibited in designated locations regulations on a portion of County Road 80, Montauk Highway, East Quogue. And Town Board Resolution ID number 47006, a notice of adoption of a local law to amend Chapter 314 of the Town Code entitled Moratorium on Battery Energy Storage Systems by amending Section 314.4 entitled Moratorium Period to extend the moratorium period for an additional 6 months. Town Board Resolution ID number 47011, which is the warrant, number 14. And Town Board Resolution ID number 47017, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to submit a grant application to the Justice Department for a body-worn camera program to be implemented by the Town of Southampton Police Department.
Second.
Madam Supervisor, on number 2 and 4, I think that should go to a work session before it goes to a public hearing. So, because some of the town board members have not seen this or heard about it beforehand.
I could just respond to that briefly. Number 2, we had a work session on, and there were changes made in relations to that work session that we had on this. And number 4 is a county roadway, and the county has asked for these changes, and the town engineer has signed off on these changes, and the highway department has signed off on these changes, but we can't enforce these changes until we pass the local law.
One of the hearings.
When was the hearing on
August
number
13th.
2? When was the work session on number
Yes.
2? When was the work
We
session?
can have another
on?
work session before the public hearing if you would like.
No, my question was, when was
I
the
don't
work?
have the date in front of me. We had a work session on
Okay.
it. We've actually,
About a year ago.
no, we had one with this board.
Okay.
Well, we could just put it off to the
Oh.
next meeting for the public hearing and have a work session on it next week. Both of them. It's only 1 week.
The number
Yeah.
4 has to be put through because it's a safety issue, and they can't make the changes until, and it's a recommendation and a requirement by the county. It's a county roadway.
I would like
Okay,
to ask
so-
legal advice on that.
All right, wait.
When it, I'm not familiar with
Isn't
this
there
one, but
time
if it's,
for-
if the hearing is not till the 13th anyway, you can set it and then still have a work session next week on Thursday.
Okay.
We can have the work session before
Okay,
the
just wanna
public
make sure.
hearing. And the work session we had was March 21st. We did talk about this, number 2 at a work session, but we can always
another
revisit it
one.
at the work session before the public hearing.
They just go through, make sure the language is all right.
Yeah,
what
because we
the-
did just get it.
Yeah, make sure there's no mistakes in it when it was written up.
All right, so if everybody, I think Cindy seconded it, all in favor to add these walk-ons to
Aye.
the agenda?
Aye.
All right, so Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice for the first public hearing?
We can't hear
You can't hear me. All right, I will speak up. Oh, and the fan is probably impacting. So,
Kevin, can you increase the, hold on. Kevin, can we increase the volume of the speakers so everybody can hear inside the room?
Not the ones up there because they'll cause feedback.
We can hear him.
Can we raise it a little bit, Kevin?
I have no controls over the ones back
Oh,
there.
okay.
The ladder and go up and-
Okay.
Well, how about if we raised our voice and spoke directly into the microphone?
Is this
Would that work better?
We go- okay.
We'll be mindful.
Okay.
Thank
Public
you.
hearing number 1, to accept a grant of conservation easement from 1030 Noyak Path LLC on a property located at Watermill, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 935-237.4, pursuant to Southampton Town Code 244-4, obtaining a development rights certificate and Section 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
thank you. So we have Dave Wilcox here with us today to introduce this topic.
Okay.
What?
Those microphones don't work out here.
Yeah, we got it.
Is it on? I don't know. The light is on. All right. Okay. So, Mr. Wilcox, please bring us up to date on
Okay.
this.
So not most of you, but some of you are new to this process. This is, for some of you, the first time you've had a hearing on issuance of development rights certificates in exchange for either a conservation easement or a deed of dedication to the town. This first application, or not application, but this first request is for an applicant who is proposing to put a conservation easement on a 1.84 acre parcel in exchange for one development right that they will then use for additional development on other property in the town. I think you have a map that shows the property outlined in red. It's located at 1030 Noyak Path in Watermill. The property is on the CPF priority acquisition list, which is one of the criteria for issuing development rights certificates. It's also located in the town's Aquifer Protection Overlay District, which is a critical environmental area, and also in the county special groundwater protection critical area. So this property does meet the criteria for issuance of a development rights certificate. And as I said, in return, the owner will give the town a conservation easement that would prohibit the development of this property.
All right, well, does anybody on the board have any questions for Dave?
No.
Otherwise, I don't have any cards for this matter. Kevin, is anybody on Zoom that would like to speak at this public hearing?
No one on Zoom.
All right, well then, if there's no questions, then I move to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice for the second public hearing?
Yes, and if you could please pass these down, these are two different documents, one of each to the town board members. Public hearing number 2, to accept a deed of residual fee from Joseph F. Gaza for properties to be maintained as open space located at North Sea, Suffolk County Tax Map number 900-634-44 and 907.1-1-36 pursuant to Southampton Town Code 244-4, obtaining a development rights certificate, and 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
Thank you.
Okay, so I see the maps are going down.
Yes.
There are two properties on this application. Both of these properties are included on one deed, and that's why it's listed as one public hearing, because this is to accept a deed of dedication, not a conservation easement, but an actual deed of dedication of the property to the town in exchange for a development rights certificate. The one property is tax parcel 963-4, lot 44. It's outlined in red, owned by Joseph Gaza. The property is 2,233 square feet in area in the CR 200 zoning district at North Sea. And the property qualifies for an allocation of 0.011165 of a development right. This property is also located in the Aquifer Protection Overlay District and the County Groundwater Protection Critical Environmental Area. It's also in the town's Old Filed Map Overlay District, and it is also on the CPF Priority Acquisition List. The reason that we go down to such a small denomination of development rights is because in the Old File Map Code, the development rights are based on the square footage of the property, and you can transfer as little as 2 square feet of development rights. These properties, as I said, or this property is 2,233 square feet. So even though it seems like a small property, it's under our code, it does qualify for development rights. The second property is a little bit smaller. It's 1,100 square feet. You can see on the maps that these are located near other preserved properties. This property will get 0.0055 of a development right, which is equivalent to 1,100 square feet. This is also in the Aquifer Protection Overlay District and in the county's critical groundwater protection area, and also in the Old File Map.
So could you explain what you mean by residual fee title?
We're going to get fee title to the land without any development rights. So that's the residual is the fee title. Mr. Gaza will get the development rights, and he'll be able to use those for Old File Map developments, for overclearing of property and things like that.
I see. That he can transfer to others if he
Correct.
desired. Yeah. All right. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Dave?
No, just the person from the first public hearing. Other people can buy these development rights. It's a bit of
Yes,
a market.
he doesn't have to use them on his own. He could sell them to other people that need them for Old File Maps or for clearing. Yes.
Right.
It's a
So
good way
whether
to-
it's a conservation easement or a residual fee, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
We're
The
hoping it-
recipient of the development rights certificate has the same rights, regardless of whether it's an easement or fee title.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a good way to save open space.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't have any cards for this public hearing. Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to speak? Well, if no one has anything else to say about it, I've moved to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice for the third public hearing?
Public hearing number 3, to accept trail, viewshed, and conservation easements relative to a site plan wetlands permit for Atlantic Golf Club in the hamlet of Bridgehampton.
Good evening, Supervisor, members of the board. For your consideration is the acceptance of 3 easements consisting of a trail easement, a viewshed easement, and conservation easements totaling approximately 708,134 square feet, predominantly surrounding Shorts Pond. These easements are in furtherance of a site plan wetlands permit approval granted by the Planning Board on December 8th, 2022, in connection with the Atlantic Golf Club's employee housing request, consisting of a 6,500 square foot two-story building for additional employee housing for 16 employees. Such housing is accessory to an existing 203.491 acre golf course located adjacent to Shorts Pond on the north side of Scuttle Hole Road in the hamlet of Bridgehampton. And as you can see from the map on the wall, the green is the conservation easement around Shorts Pond. The orange outline, if you can see on the bottom, is the viewshed easement from Scuttle Hole Road. And in the gray is the trail easement, and that is connected to other easements on the property. So if the board is so inclined, at the end of this, I would recommend closing, and there's a recommendation on for an adoption, a resolution on for adoption, if you have any questions.
Do you know if that trail connects to our extensive trail system in the town?
I believe that it does. I know it goes to other trails on the property. I wish I was trying to get a map that showed you the rest of it, but I didn't have it.
It does. The Trails
Yeah.
Advisory Committee was involved in
Okay, good.
requesting that.
I know we preserved the two properties to the east of it on either side of the glen that comes into the pond there. Nice.
Very good. No cards on this one. Kevin, is there anybody on Zoom who'd like to speak? All right. Thank you, Christine. Move to close the public hearing, number
Second.
3. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice for the 4th public hearing?
Public hearing number 4, for applicants seeking an exemption from Town Code Chapter 314 entitled Moratorium on Battery Energy Storage Systems pursuant to subsection 314-6 entitled Applications that May Be Exempted.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, good evening. I guess it is evening. Madam Supervisor, members of the board. My name is Keith Archer of Harris, Bloom and Archer. Our firm has been representing Canal Southampton Battery Storage in its pending application before the Planning Board for a special exception and site plan approval for a battery energy storage facility on a 4.9 acre site located on North Avenue, approximately 90 feet south of the eastbound Sunrise Highway, near exit. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Better?
sorry.
That's okay. Yeah,
That doesn't really work for the audience, so you have to speak more loudly. That's for the Zoom.
There is a speaker there, though. That
He has
might-
to speak more loudly.
I could speak louder.
Okay.
It's like being at home. Joining me tonight is my law partner, Linda Agnew. Is that okay now? Who will address the board with respect to the order of the hearings tonight, with the applicant's exemption hearing being scheduled before the proposed extension of the moratorium, which expires on August, I believe, 13th, 2024.
I
And I
believe
think-
it's the 22nd.
22nd? Thank you. 2024. And I'd ask that Linda address the board with respect to that, and then I'll come back.
Thank you, Keith. Good evening, Madam Supervisor and members of the board. My name is Linda Agnew. I'm also with the law firm of Harris, Bloom and Archer, and we represent the applicant CS. We'd like to place on the record our objection to the order in which these matters are proceeding in terms of the exemption hearing being done prior to consideration of the extension of the moratorium. Logically, if the moratorium is not extended, and it shouldn't be, there's no reason to go forward with the exemption hearing, because by its terms, the moratorium will expire on August 22nd. The applicant can go back to the planning board, where it's been where it's had 6 meetings, 2 public hearings, a negative deck, a recommendation by the Suffolk County Planning Commission, and they can get their decision on their planning board application. I could address it now. I could also address it, in terms of the extension portion of this, but this really shouldn't be extended. This was a moratorium that was issued a year ago. It was issued in August of 2023. At that point, the board said they were going to retain an expert. They were going to take a hard look at the issues that they perceived. And, you know, if you look at the terms of the moratorium, the issues that were perceived was public concern and fear, and we get that. You know, the science is there. This is a safe thing. In the year.
All right, come on now. You don't want anyone doing that to you while you're up here.
In the year that has, between now and then, there's been a year. There's been no expert retained. There's really been no meaningful hard look.
It seems as though you're addressing the next public hearing issue.
Well, my suggestion, Madam Supervisor, is that the extension should be considered before the exemption, because if the moratorium is not extended, it's going to expire by its terms. We do not have to go forward with the exemption hearing because there'd be no need to, because there'd be no moratorium.
But it is in effect until August 22nd, and I believe you picked the date to come and present, so we should just go ahead with your presentation.
Actually, Madam Supervisor, we wanted a date in August, and we were told that we needed to appear this evening.
Your objection has been noted. Proceed.
Thank you.
So I guess we're going forward. Okay. So the property, let me just continue. The property that's the subject of this application is zoned, everybody hear me? Is zoned R60, which permits a battery storage facility as proposed by the applicant by special exception issued by the town planning board. So it's important to emphasize that the hearing tonight is not on the merits of the application, but rather on the applicant's request for an exemption from the moratorium, which this board imposed, as Linda indicated, approximately a year ago, almost a year ago. With the extension, the moratorium would then run for 18 months. So through my testimony tonight and the documents and analysis already in the public record of the planning board hearings, the applicant will have documented its entitlement to an exemption from the moratorium pursuant to the exemption provisions which you, the town board, wrote into the moratorium statute, which is known as Town Code Section 314-6, Section 1, subsections 8F. So in the interest of completeness, I would request that the testimony and records of the planning board's 6 previous hearings and meetings be added and incorporated into the record of this hearing. And those dates were February 10th of 2022, September 8th of 2022, October 27th of 2022, March 9th of 23, and April 27th of 2023, and June 8th of 2023. However, for completeness, I'm also going to be submitting a memorandum of law in support of our exemption, as well as 2 flash drives containing the supporting materials from these hearings.
Keith, I'm sorry. The hearings were from the planning board hearings?
Planning board hearings. Yeah, planning board hearings. But what we did was that we put all of those hearings and all the submissions on a flash drive. But I did request that all of that information, which the town does have, be also incorporated into the record of this hearing.
And you're handing that to the clerk?
We're handing it to the clerk. We're handing a memorandum of law to the clerk, as well as a flash drive. And Christine, I have a list of everything that's on the flash drive if you want
Yeah,
it.
you should probably give that to the clerk as
Yeah.
well, when you can do that, so that they can keep track of everything.
Andrew, do you have that extra copy?
There's a copy of a list of all the documents.
In there?
On the flash.
Oh, that's fine. Okay. So as part of my presentation, Nick Petrakis, who is a licensed professional engineer with Energy Safety Response Group, will address the board with respect to the fire detection, safety, mitigation measures that are required and will be in place as part of the applicant's BEST project, and will tie those into the requirements for the exemption we're requesting tonight.
Excuse me, Counsel, is it appropriate for them to rely on the minutes or the hearings before a different board that we are not privy to?
I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, it's a question of they can submit that as if they choose as part of their process. The amount of weight you give it in your deliberations is, that'll weigh on that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Madam Supervisor, these were public hearings held before the planning board.
Correct. I think the supervisor's point, though, is that they weren't hearings held before them
Town
that
board.
they testified
100%.
to and asked questions to. So they're
100%.
worth whatever they're worth for them to hear.
100%. Thank you. So, by way of background, AKRF, who's the applicant's environmental consultant, prepared and submitted to the planning board as part of the applicant's special exception and site plan approval applications an extensive, expanded environmental assessment, which analyzed all environmental issues associated with this application, many of which are considerations embodied within the town's criteria set forth in town code, the exemption provisions, section 314-6, section 1. So the testimony we present tonight and the materials submitted tonight and those previously submitted collectively cover each of the requirements of the requested exemption, making it clear that the applicant, as a matter of law, is entitled to the requested exemption from the moratorium. With this said, some history of the application is required. As I mentioned, since the date of the filing of the special exception and site plan applications, there have been 6 public hearings before the Town of Southampton Planning Board over a period of 18 months. A pre-application hearing was held on February 10th, 2022. 2 SEQA hearings were held, one on September 8th, 2022, and the second on October 27th, 2022. The completeness hearing on March 9th, 2023, and 2 special exception hearings on April 27th, 2023, and June 8th. During the SEQA hearings, all environmental issues were reviewed, discussed, and addressed by the applicant. The planning board also considered in detail the prior fire events, which everybody's aware of, as well as all environmental information presented by the applicant, including fire suppression,
I'm
battery
going to object to that. You can go on, but those fires didn't all happen prior to the secret negative declaration. That's just an aside.
After consideration of all these issues and taking the requisite hard look, the planning board adopted a negative declaration of significance pursuant to the secret statute on October 27th, 2022. Furthermore, the planning board adopted another resolution on March 9th, 2023, deeming the application complete after review by the Southampton Planning Department and the Southampton Town Engineer. Adoption of the negative declaration was followed by 2 special exception and site plan hearings, public hearings, on April 27th, 2023, and June 8th of 2023. At these hearings, the applicant and its experts offered testimony, and the public was given a full opportunity to provide comments and ask questions. The applicants and its experts testified, and the documents submitted on behalf of the applicant clearly showed that the proposed application satisfied all of the requirements of the town code for the requested special exception and site plan approval. However, based upon concerns expressed at the special exception and site plan hearings, the applicant and its consultants met with the Hampton Bays Board of Fire Commissioners, which was followed by a letter dated July 6, 2023, addressed to the Town Planning Board, and which is on that flash drive, confirming that the fire district, which had certain concerns that we addressed, will work cooperatively with the applicant in the planning and operation of the proposed BESS facility. So the applicant also met with the Hampton Bays Water District regarding the volume and pressure of available water should it be required in the event of a fire. The concerns were resolved by the applicant agreeing to add a fire hydrant on the north side of North Road and to have a flow test conducted by H2M, the district's water engineer. The flow test was completed successfully to guarantee the district that there will be a sufficient quantity of water available if needed. The applicant agreed to add an additional water resource via a standpipe adjacent to the Shinnecock Canal to be used in a worst-case scenario. This is all contained in the June 28, 2023 memo from the Hampton Bays Water District, which is, of course, in the record of the planning board documents, but is also on the flash drive. The applicant also sent information mailing to 3,000 households in the Hampton Bays community regarding best facilities. To date, the applicant has received 5 responses, 3 positive, 1 neutral, 1 against. So, as I mentioned, the planning board held 2 special exception site plan hearings on this application. The second special exception site plan hearing, held on June 8th, 2023, was adjourned by the planning board chairperson without an adjournment date being set, though requested by the applicant. The planning board took no further action on the application. Soon thereafter, the town board held a public hearing on a proposed 6-month moratorium of consideration and approval of best applications. No further action was taken by the planning board, notwithstanding that the Suffolk County Planning Commission recommended that the planning board approve this application in its June 7th, 2023 staff report. This obviously did not occur, or we wouldn't be here tonight. Additionally, in its August 2nd, 2023 staff report, the Suffolk County Planning Commission recommended that the town issue a decision on the application as it was filed before the moratorium. As I stated, we will address each of the issues, the criteria for an exemption from the current moratorium, and establish why the requested exemption must be granted. So let me go through the elements. The first element for the board to consider is whether to grant an exemption is the size of the subject parcel. As shown on the plans and in the expanded environmental assessment, the applicant's property for this proposed BESS facility is 4.9 acres. This is far in excess of the minimum requirement of 120,000 square feet for a BESS facility greater than 600 kilowatts on residential property, as set forth in section 330-162.2, subsection C2. The second element for the board to consider in determining whether to grant an exemption is the proximity of the applicant's premises to pine barrens, wetlands, endangered plant and animal species, wildlife, and other similar environmental concerns. These topics have previously been discussed and addressed by the applicant during its 2 secret hearings before the planning board and in the submitted expanded environmental assessment prepared by AKRF, the applicant's environmental consultant. Again, those hearings resulted in a negative declaration issued by the planning board on October 27, 2023. A copy of the secret negative declaration has been included with the materials submitted on the hard drive. The expanded environmental assessment showed that no pine barrens are located within the property, adjacent to, or in proximity to the proposed project site. In addition, there are no federal or state regulated wetlands within or directly adjacent to the property. In addition, the expanded environmental assessment showed no signs or evidence of any endangered, threatened, or special concern species being on the property. Due to the location of the property being surrounded by Sunrise Highway and its exit ramp, it offers habitat suitable only to disturbance-tolerant species. Vegetation clearing and tree removal would occur between December 1 and February 28th during a time period when many wildlife species are either inactive or have migrated away from the project site for the winter. Further, the expanded environmental assessment determined that there are no endangered, threatened, or special species of concern which will be adversely affected by construction and operation of the project. The expanded environmental assessment confirms that there will be no adverse impact to natural resources from construction and operation of the project. Okay, so those are the first two elements. The third element for the board to consider in determining whether to grant the requested exemption from the moratorium is the extent of the proposed development and or disturbance of the applicant's premises. As previously mentioned, the subject property is 4.9 acres, which is far in excess of the minimum lot area requirement set forth in section 330-162.21C2 of the town code. The property is already partially developed and cleared due to development and natural clearing. The applicant submitted a proposed landscape plan as part of the proposed project to mitigate clearing that will occur and to ensure the property is well screened and vegetated. The proposed landscaping has been selected by the applicant's engineer to be the best suited for this property and to provide the greatest visual and noise screening. To that end, the expanded environmental assessment contained a noise analysis which confirmed that the proposed project will be in compliance with the town noise ordinance requirements specifically set forth in sections 330-162.2 sub J and 235-3B of the town code. Now, as shown on the site plan submitted with the applications, the project will include multiple BESS cabinets, which produce no noise but require temperature control through cooling units, which are proposed as either side-mounted or rooftop units on each cabinet. In addition, switchgear and 138 kV step-up transformer are proposed as part of the project to support interconnection to the LIPA PSEG LI transmission grid. Based upon the studies and analysis done by AKRF, as evident in Appendix D of the expanded environmental assessment, and the real-world experience from operation of BESS facilities, the noise levels on the project will be compliant with the town noise code limits. Finally, the property is located between Sunrise Highway to the north, the entrance and exit ramp for Sunrise Highway to the east and south, and the County Department of Public Works maintenance yard to the south. The noise generated will be reduced to the existing and proposed landscaping and vegetation on the property, by the proposed vegetation on the property. Additionally, the noise generated by these surrounding properties and uses will drown out and absorb any noise generated by the BESS cabinets. So those are three elements. The fourth element for the board to consider in determining whether to grant an exemption from the moratorium is the environmental significance, if any, of the applicant's parcel and the proposed development's impact upon the environment, including existing transportation resources. Again, as noted previously, the application went through two secret hearings with the Planning Board, September 8th, 2022 and October 27th, 2022, at which time all environmental issues were reviewed, discussed, and addressed, resulting in the Planning Board taking the requisite hard look, resulting in the issuance of a negative declaration for this project, which stated in part, and I'm going to quote from the negative declaration, the Planning Board reviewed said application, and due to the nature of the proposed action, existing site conditions, and for the reasons outlined in the expanded EAF Part 3, the board finds the proposed activities would not result in any significant environmental impacts. To that end, any questions regarding the environmental impacts of the property on the property is unfounded due to the extensive review and hearings on this project by the Planning Board. Then there's been no change to the proposed project from the time the negative declaration was adopted to today. Notwithstanding the foregoing, because energy storage technology are generally newer than most other types of grid infrastructure like substations and transformers, there are claims that have been raised related to the safety of battery energy storage systems. All of these questions and claims can be addressed with facts. Fact: between 2012 and 2024, there have been 19 incidents recorded by Electric Power Research Institute across all large-scale operating battery storage facilities in the United States, some of which were during product testing, meaning not in operation. For reference, there are about 5,000 operating facilities in the U.S., compared to gas stations, which according to the NFPA have approximately 4,150 fire-related incidents, and homes that have 350,800 fire-related events on an annual basis.
Mr. Archer, when you said large scale, what would that be?
Approximately the same size.
100 megawatts?
They could be less.
Wait, the 19 I'm talking about.
I can follow up and get you that information, Christine. So BEST facilities actually contribute to reducing air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions by integrating renewable energy sources, lessening the need for dirty energy options, which burn fuel during regular operations. This in and of itself has positive impacts on public health by improving air quality and mitigating climate change effects. While there have been fires at other BEST operations in New York State over the past year, none of these events have resulted in any injuries or casualties. Also importantly, there's been no evidence of any harmful contamination of air or groundwater resulting from any of these fires. As this board is aware, there was a fire at a BEST facility in East Hampton a little over a year ago. A recent Newsday article, which is also on that disc, from July 12, 2024, reports that the BEST facility has restarted operations. It goes on to report that, quote, the battery's water-based fire suppression system operated as designed and quickly contained the May 31st fire, and no further emergency response was required, unquote, and that no evacuation zone was put into effect. The DEC conducted a probe into the site and fire, ultimately closing their file on February 2nd, 2024. The groundwater quality testing done found that lithium amounts were below harmful hazardous levels. Past incidents demonstrate that fires are contained, if there are any, contained within the installation perimeter facility. And there have been no known people medically treated for poor air quality in neighboring areas. So as part of this fourth element of the exemption criteria, I would now like to ask Nick Petrakis, who's a professional engineer with Energy Safety Research Response Group, to address the board with respect to the compatibility of the proposed project with the community based upon fire safety measures that will be implemented. And I'll submit for the record, if I may, a copy of Mr. Petrakis' resume. And once read, you'll see that he is a professional engineer. He'll give you some additional information on his background, but he is a professional engineer with extensive experience with fire-related matters. Let me submit this for the record. Okay.
Thank you, Keith. Members of the board, thank you for having me. People of Southampton, thank you for having me as well. I'm going to try to project my voice as much as I can. Like Keith had mentioned, my name is Nicholas Petrakis. I'm a registered design professional in the state of New York, a fire protection and mechanical engineer with a company called ESRG, Energy Safety Response Group. So ESRG, who we are, we're a group of either current or former firefighters or engineers like myself that specialize in battery energy storage safety. Amongst other energy generating sources or energy sources, one of our focuses are lithium-ion technologies. We do have a full-scale fire test lab in Ohio, which we actually get to do destructive testing on these exact same systems that are going to be proposed here and throughout the country. And we are also safety consultants to the Canal Southampton project. So I've been asked to stand here today and provide my testimony and speak on behalf of safety for these systems. And I did hear it before when we mentioned safety. There was a concern, and I do want to state that as an engineer, there's nothing that is 100% completely safe, right? I can't say that about any sort of energy source. But what I can say is that for lithium-ion technology, there's a tremendous amount of regulations and safety standards and protocols that are implemented in the NFPA 855 standards and the New York State codes and standards, as well as our emergency response procedures. We are also members of the Interagency Fire Safety Working Group with the state, with NYSERDA. We are one of their experts that help consult for energy storage related safety items. We provide guidance and testimony to municipal governments, to fire departments alike, and developers and facility operators as well. Before I joined ESRG, I worked for the New York City Fire Department, as well as my boss.
You're ashamed of yourself.
Oh, please, no comments
As-
from the audience.
As well as my boss, Paul Rogers, who is a lieutenant in hazmat operations. I am joined by another member of ESRG, a very esteemed colleague, a professional engineer that works in this space. And before working for ESRG, we developed the codes and standards in New York City, known as 3RC&Y, in a very densely populated urban
Sir, could
environment.
you please just address the board that?
Yes,
I think-
okay, absolutely. So we developed these codes and standards for New York City. It was very challenging because we do not have a tremendous amount of space, so safety was ultimately extremely critical for these systems. We made sure we implemented the best codes and standards and the highest level of safety, which ended up being adopted in the New York State fire codes, as well as throughout the country for these codes, the NFPA 855 standard. So in our work with the Interagency Safety Working Group, we did develop that there are no absolute mandated requirements for ultimatum of any sort of evacuations, just because there's an incident at the BESS facility. Like Mr. Archer had mentioned before with some of the events that happened in New York State, there were no evacuations ordered. There was extensive air monitoring that was conducted that did not show any sort of harmful toxic levels above the ambient. And the Interstate Agency Working Group did release their recommended additions or modifications to the New York State Code, which the Canal Southampton project is going to above and beyond promise to comply with, as well as all of the minimum base requirements in the codes and
They
standards.
initiated draft recommendations. They didn't do the finals yet, correct?
Finals are not released yet, but they are willing to meet with any interim or final requirements. And those requirements as well, those interim requirements, did not mandate any extended separation distances from residential occupancies or any sort of other occupancies. They maintained the original separation distances that were implemented in the current codes and standards. So as required by the town of Southampton, the Canal Southampton project did provide an emergency operations and fire safety plan, which we consulted on. We worked hand in hand with the local fire department as well to provide consultation on those additional resources that were mentioned before. And these plans include everything as far as shutdown, emergency response, inspection and testing, training, which we feel is a very important component of emergency operations plans. And they are still compliant to, subject to compliance with the requirement of the town code as well. The BESS facility by Canal Southampton will be monitored on a 24/7 basis to the millisecond, basically for any sort of operational issues, voltages, temperatures. This is also an additional layer of safety to make sure that the system is operating as intended. There's multiple levels of safety, which we call design in depth, belts and suspenders sort of protection that are going to be implemented into this project. There are multiple layers of fire detection and protection systems, in addition to what's required by the codes and standards. There will be battery management system for automatic shutdowns, like I mentioned, 365, 7 days a week monitoring, and as well as a non-combustible and robust construction of these cabinets, of these enclosures that are not enterable. It's not a dedicated use building. These are cabinet type systems, as well as, like I mentioned before, those emergency response plans and a subject matter expert contact to the local fire department. We will provide training and reoccurring training to the fire department. We are open to any sort of additional needs that they may have. ESRG, we're local. I live on Long Island. A number of ESRG members are within the tri-state area or live on Long Island. We will be providing subject matter expert services and even emergency response services if needed for this project to be able to respond on site and provide the local fire department with a phone a friend consultation if there ever was an event associated with this site. In the unlikely event that an incident happens, the fire department has all of the tools that they need at their disposal. There are no unique special tools needed by fire departments other than specialty training to understand the emergency response procedures, which we feel are very critical.
Is that true?
There will be a readily available source of water, as mentioned, that will be provided via hydrant. It's not necessarily needed. We have emergency response procedures that recommend a defensive tactic, but if they do need to use water for whatever reason, they have it at their disposal.
Sir, you'll have an opportunity to speak when they're finished.
As mentioned before by Mr. Archer, there have not been any events in the United States where a fire event has propagated outside of the facility of the energy storage system. This does not pose any greater fire risk than any similar utility, industrial, or commercial use, especially, for example, as mentioned before, a gas station. So I am in receipt of the letter from the Board of Fire Commissioners from the Hampton Bays Fire District, dated July 6th, and the exhibit, and also receipt of the letter from the Hampton Bays Water District. I've reviewed the comments. We understand those comments and concerns. We are here to meet all those stipulations and also continue to support and provide any assistance that's needed by the Hamptons Bays Fire District to uphold their mission to ensure the safety of the Hamptons Bays community. I'm also here to address any questions that you might have on the board as far as safety, lithium-ion battery technology.
To your knowledge, yeah, I have a question.
We have questions for you.
Yeah,
Oh,
sure.
for you.
That's Councilman Scavone,
Right.
go.
To your knowledge, has Suffolk County instituted classes at the Suffolk County Fire Academy to train local fire departments on battery energy storage? There's a number of moratoriums.
Yes, so we actually do work
And-
with the Suffolk County Training Academy. We've done training with Chief Rudy Sutterman when he was the chief in charge of the training academy. We are willing to do more training with the training academies and the local departments, but yes,
So-
we've done training before.
My question was did Suffolk County have trainings? But I'm glad that you're
Yes.
willing to work with them.
Yes,
for
yes.
that.
We have conducted, ESRG has conducted energy storage system safety training to the Suffolk County Training Academy in the past.
Okay.
I have a question. You said that the fire would, if you had an incident, it would be self-contained.
Yes, so, yeah.
So if self-contained, does that mean that when they roll out two pumpers and hook and ladder, it's self-contained on the property, or is it going to block up Sunrise Highway, Montauk Highway, Old Highway, and the ramps?
Yeah, so the benefit of having this sort of technology and this
No, where are you going to put the trucks? That's what I want to know.
right, we do have recommended staging areas.
Where are
Along
the staging area? On those roads or on the property?
the staging areas, our primary staging area is right outside of the facility entrance. We can always set up secondary
So it's
staging
not
areas.
on the property.
No, we do not recommend opening up the facility entrance.
Then
We
you-
recommend
then
staging
you-
outside.
Then you're making a not an ideal place for people to go by or get out of if they want to leave the area.
It's also depending on the
No, you
event.
answered my question. You already did it. The fire trucks are off the premises. They're not
Correct.
contained, and that affects the neighborhood, and that's not good.
We do have a hydrant not along Sunrise Highway.
You already answered my question. My next question is, when you use water or foam, where does it go? Is that self-contained on the property?
Right. We do not recommend using any foam. We do recommend using water if necessary,
Is it
but
self-contained on the
ultimately,
property?
So
Does
the-
the water stay on the property or flow downhill? 'Cause
We-
I like to go clamming in
Right.
Shinnecock Bay.
Right.
And I see at least 6 people who go clamming in here in Shinnecock Bay. And that could close the bay down.
So we do not recommend using water on an enclosure that is consuming itself safely, because it could extend the duration of that event, and it could make introduce water into that enclosure and potentially make it worse. These systems are designed and tested to isolate that failure and contain it, or if it does break, it won't spread to an adjacent enclosure.
Then why you say to use water?
Because the first responders, if they do need to
Where's
use
the water
water,
going to go? That's what I want to
we,
know.
we always like giving the first responders options. If they do need to use water, it's very defensively. It's not sprayed on the container that is being that's on fire. It's used to either cool down adjacent enclosures that are unaffected if needed. That's only if needed, or if they need to control any sort of smoke migration, or if they need to wet any of the vegetation in the area.
Okay,
It's
good.
highly unlikely that that's done, but that water is not directly introduced into the
Good thing you
enclosure
brought up
that's on
smoke
fire.
because there's a guy who lives there. His wife is handicapped and can't leave. Are you going to get her out so she doesn't have to breathe that smoke?
So there's a tremendous concern about the smoke impact. The fact that these systems are containerized and smaller is that there's not going to be a large fire event. It's going to be isolated to that initiating unit. All smoke is toxic, whether it comes from a battery energy storage system, a vehicle, a gas station, a Home Depot that's on fire, right? There's products of combustions that we don't want people breathing in. This facility is in a very favorable location from residential areas, especially with a significant distance. I will confidently say If I could say, we're talking about approximately 300 feet from the
I have
nearest
friends who
residential
live in that
area.
neighborhood, so I go to that neighborhood
I-
all the
I-
time.
I-
go
I
twice a
understand.
day. Okay.
I understand. We are very serious about safety. So to give you some history about where we're talking about with separation distances.
Sir, please address the
Sorry,
board.
the codes and standards have minimum separation distances of 10 feet. Why is it so low? Why only 10 feet?
You were a fireman.
I'm not an engineer, but my boss is a fireman and I worked for the
And
fire
when I
department.
went through,
I did. I worked for the New York City Fire Department. I was an
You gotta
engineer.
address the board.
My boss that worked for me is a lieutenant in hazmat operations. I worked very closely with operations to develop these
when I went
codes
to
and
high school,
standards.
it's a thumb. You look by the thumb, you see it, you back up, and that's more than 10 feet.
So, in accordance with our emergency response procedures and the separation distances that are incorporated for this project, they meet and they exceed those minimum separation distances that are in the codes. But there's reasons for those separation distances. There's full-scale fire testing that's required for this technology. It's understood that any smoke impact is potentially toxic. What we've seen with our own fire testing internally is that once you're outside of a small distance from that system, even outside of the perimeter of that, there's not going to be any negligible impact, negative impact from that smoke. Of course, we always recommend that firefighters that respond to that system don their full PPE, because for any fire event, if they're getting intimate with that system, they'll be there for any period of time. But for anything outside of the perimeter of the facility, we do not expect any sort of negative impact. And that has been also shown with the events that have happened in New York State.
Supply everyone downwind of those masks and tanks, because they won't be able to leave, because the fire trucks are staging and the first responders are staging in that area.
So I'd like to speak on shelter in places or evacuation orders, which is very rare for energy storage system fires, but is actually very common in any other sort of event. It happens all the time.
Let's
said,
let's just let him answer the question and then we'll proceed.
Because of, again, like I mentioned, because of the distance to any of the nearest residencies, there's a tremendous amount of dispersion that would happen naturally through the air where we would not see any sort of negative impact from toxic smoke. There's always that determination from the chief in charge. It's always up to them to make a knowledgeable estimate and determine if they do need to do any sort of evacuation or shelter in place. In our emergency response procedures, we do not recommend that off the bat, but we recommend that they make educated decision based off of the event, the severity of the event, the duration of the event, or any sort of reports that they're getting in from people in the area if they're receiving any sort of, if they're having any troubles or anything like that. From what we've seen from the events that have happened throughout the United States, that hasn't been necessary. Any sort of shelter in place has been done out of an abundance of caution due to the limited amount of information that was available to the chief.
What causes the batteries to light up?
So lithium-ion technology, all lithium-ion, whether it's lithium iron phosphate, whether it's the other technologies that you'd see in electric vehicles like NMC, in our cell phones, in our laptops, all around us, have a very similar flammable electrolyte, which is made from some sort of flammable solvent. These systems go into thermal runaway, where it will self-heat, create additional heat, and release this electrolyte in a sort of an off-gassing. If that electrolyte catches fire, that's what that thermal runaway process is. It refeeds into that chemical reaction and continues to go into thermal runaway.
Is there a maintenance protocol for the battery cells?
There's maintenance, but there's also full-scale fire testing. So these battery cells and these systems, these modules are required to actually be destructively tested to see if they do fail and they go into that thermal runaway event, what happens? Is it going to automatically spread and involve the entire enclosure, or is it going to be maintained to what we call the module, to the subcomponent? That's exactly what this mandatory testing that's now nationwide makes sure that this thermal runaway failure, not only just one cell, multiple cells have to be failed. You have to actually show a thermal runaway propagation with this fire testing. You have to force it enough where it actually jumps to adjacent cells. But this testing has to show that that failure is contained to inside that unit, to inside the module, and it will not break out of the module.
Does regular changing out of the cells prevent runaway fires?
Maintenance is critical. These cells do have a expected lifespan. That BMS monitoring that I mentioned before is sort of the heartbeat to this technology. It'll sense trends if it's operating sort of differently, if there's over voltages or things like that that look off. That'll alert a staff to go and do maintenance. It'll also automatically shut itself down if it's operating outside of some pre-described, guidance, right? So maintenance is very helpful, but also there's always opportunity for something to happen that's very unexpected. This passive design that's already incorporated into the system is going to make sure that it's maintained to within that enclosure. That being said, there's always things that happen that could go above and beyond this very controlled lab testing, right? This is where ESRG has done a tremendous amount of full-scale burn testing where we push it above and beyond that. We want to see a real significant failure. And even with those type of failures, we've seen that these technologies, especially the ones that are enclosures, these cabinets that are non-enterable, they're non-building based systems, so somebody can't go in there and physically walk in. If it were to be a larger fire and involve this system, it's not going to jump. It's not going to involve other systems next to it. It's going to be isolated to that box.
I have one last question for myself. Are the alarms hardwire or Wi-Fi?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Are the alarm system, is it hardwire or
Yeah, so we have multiple
Wi-Fi?
multiple levels of alarms. The internal alarms that are from the computer are hardwired into each cell, so they'll have a voltage and temperature monitoring. But there's external, separate, and redundant fire protection systems. So fire alarm systems that'll report out to what we call a central station monitoring system. It's completely independent, but it will pick up any signatures of fires to make sure if there is an event that wasn't picked up by the internal detection, it'll call the fire department or the subject matter experts to let them know that there's an event at this facility.
So what happens if Microsoft goes down?
Yeah, the good thing about these systems is that they require multiple redundant pathways for communication. So let's say we have our cellular down, they'll have wireless to call out. And these redundancies make sure that if there is an event like something like that, at least there'll be some sort of backup, like a landline or something like that to make sure that those systems are operational. They have battery backup as well. But they'll also always have some sort of means to dial out and communicate. And especially a fire. A fire can knock out maybe the communications within that enclosure. But again, we have redundancies that are going to break out of adjacent enclosures as well.
And does a battery fire react when you starve it from oxygen?
So
is that the technique? You seal the thing off and it
there's
no
alternative extinguishing agents that are designed to remove oxygen. Since it is that thermal runaway chemistry that I mentioned, that it self-heats and it self-provides that reaction. So if some alternative system were there to eliminate that fire, that thermal runaway can continue to generate that gas. If that does happen, though, we have passive barriers, passive fire protection, or we have what we call explosion protection systems that'll make sure that gas doesn't stay in that enclosure and it'll vent out or it'll be mitigated by some other way.
Okay.
Do you one question and then I'll let you take it. Do you have interconnect approval from LIPA? You have to come up to the podium. Sorry.
My name is Gus Hadidi. I'm a developer at Rhineland Energy.
Just speak a little louder for the folks here.
It's a question for you, so I'll respond. There is no interconnection requirement with LIPA. The interconnection process goes through the New York ISO because this is a transmission asset. The process is a multi-year process, and we're in the final stages of that process. The way it then works, once we finalize the study process with the New York ISO, is we go back and we do a three-way agreement with the New York ISO and LIPA.
Do you know why you don't have an interconnect agreement with LIPA at this time? Is there a particular reason why you had to go through the ISO?
Yeah, anything that is on a transmission level has to go through the New York ISO.
Because it's grid scale.
It is grid scale, exactly. Distribution, you go directly to LIPA. Anything below 20 megawatts, you have to go directly to LIPA for approval.
Okay.
Besides the lithium, is there other elements that are combustible in the units?
The main flammable components are that electrolyte, electrolyte solvent. I mean, there's plastics, like with anything, like a vehicle, you'd have plastics, you have foams. There's plastics inside this technology, so that might add to the fuel load. But the primary source of the ignition is that flammable electrolyte.
I just have two questions. One, you had mentioned that there is an off-gassing mechanism that releases the gases so those gases are safe and for the environment and for the people surrounding the area.
Well, any sort of off-gassing from a fire event, from a thermal runaway event, is going to have, some sort of toxic component to it because it is a fire. Mm-hmm. If we have a couch fire, it's going to have carbon monoxide. If we have a plastics fire, it's going to have things that are not good to breathe. I wouldn't want to be breathing that directly. The benefit is that fire is going to be isolated in size, and we have separation distances. So once that system exhausts it out to the environment, it's just going to be diluted out.
And then I've heard, we've been going through this process and talking about the safety and, the fire issues with it and how it's self-contained and how it usually doesn't jump to another unit and how everything is contained in the cabinets. But what we haven't heard anybody test or try out is what happens in the event of the cabinets being damaged because of vandalism, because a car runs off the road,
right.
or you're talking about these are, they're being maintained by a computer system.
Mm-hmm.
What if somebody hacks into that computer system and sets off multiple units at one time? I mean, these are all real concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. And they are very real concerns. And there are also requirements that are placed in the codes to sort of try to address that. Everything, all act of God can't be really addressed, but they try their best to make sure that the site is secured away. It's fenced in. I believe there's going to be security that's going to be provided for the site via cameras or something like that. Yes, impact or something like that. I mean, these systems are tested for impact protection from sort of a normal, penetration into the module, and it could cause a failure. But the fact is that the site is going to have, it's within a fenced-in perimeter, and security and things like that are just added levels of safety. There's also requirements for cybersecurity, which I'm glad you mentioned, to make sure that there's no nefarious, sort of hacking into these systems as well. And they have built-in safeties that can't be overrun. They can't be forced to overcharge.
My question though is like, what happens if and when the cabinets are damaged and they're no longer self-contained fires?
Yeah, and that's exactly what the type of testing that we do too. We force it greater than what this regular mandated full-scale fire testing that's in the fire codes. We want to see, do we really have to force it into a failure to overwhelm all of these fire protection systems? It's going above and beyond these things. But yes, in that very, unlikely situation, but possible situation, if it breaks out of that enclosure, just the fact that these systems are non-enterable, non-occupiable with their regular separation distances will allow it to sort of burn itself out without having to jump across or becoming a larger fire event. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here for any other questions if you have. Thank you.
Ms. Galera had a question earlier on the size of the projects, and the range is, the smallest is 15 megawatts and the largest is 300 megawatts.
That was in the 19.
That is correct.
Session. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Maybe if we open that door so
Open it again and put the thing out.
you want the door open? Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Okay, we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
It's getting warm in here. We're trying to figure out
It is warm.
deal with it.
Do you want me to wait
You can
for
go
Christine
ahead.
to get back in?
Proceed.
Okay, thanks. The fifth element for the board to consider is the compatibility of the proposed development with the aesthetic resources of the community or with the existing community or neighborhood character. In order for a best facility to be most efficient and effective, it needs to be located near a substation. This allows for the energy stored and dispensed from the best facility into the electric grid with maximum efficiency. This allows for the least amount of energy waste. Best should not be viewed as an industrial use. That should be pushed into the far corners of the town, right? Best needs to be viewed as a utility. The utility needs to be located in the community that it serves. You cannot put all of the gas stations, telecommunication poles, and electric transmission lines out of residential communities, because those communities need to be served by the utility. Long Island and Southampton in particular experience significant electricity demand peaks, especially in summer, like today. Battery storage helps to manage these peak efficiency by storing energy during low demand periods. We've heard this before, and releasing it when demand is high. Again, there is significant screening existing on the property, which will remain to the greatest extent possible, and it will be further supplemented by additional landscaping that's shown on the plans that we had previously submitted. The sixth element, we're getting there, for the board to consider is the compatibility of the proposed development with the recommendations of the 1970 master plan, the 1999 comprehensive plan update, and all adopted comprehensive plans and plan elements henceforth. As battery energy storage is relatively new technology, there is no reference in the 1970 or 1999 comprehensive plan. However, the best evidence of the municipality's comprehensive plan is in its zoning code. Southampton zoning code permits battery energy storage systems of the proposed size in various zoning districts within the town, including the R60 zoning district, which the property is located within, provided that the proposed development meets the special exception requirements of section 330-122 and 330-162.21 of the town code. So the applicant has demonstrated its compliance with all those requirements, as evidenced by the planning board negative declaration and all the documents submitted by the applicant. This has been clear during all of the hearings the applicant has had before the planning board, as well as the applicant's written petition for a special exception, a copy of which has been submitted previously, but is of course contained within the hard drive that were submitted. So the town enacted the battery storage code in 2020, and as quoted by the town planning and development administrator, Janice Shura, during the public hearing on July 11, 2023, we did not create this code in a vacuum. To quote, "We work with NYSERDA and their fire experts to create the code. Moreover, the requirements to site best facilities in R60 zoning requires 3 times the land mass than in industrial areas." Unquote. As also stated by Ms. Shura during the same hearing, the closest residential property to the site is 400 feet away. And that's generally correct. Additionally, and we're getting towards the end, green energy projects such as this best proposal are an important part of the town's goals. The town has established the Sustainable Southampton Green Advisory Committee and furtherance of those goals, with one of their objectives being to prioritize goals, suggest programs, recommend policy, legislation, and code amendments that encourage and contribute to sustainability with a concentrated focus on the reduction of the town's ecological impact footprint. The BEST project does just that. BEST is a critical part of the green energy life cycle. By harnessing the excessive energy created by solar and wind farms during peak production, saving that energy and releasing it back to the electric grid during peak demand, it helps reduce the need for dirty energy producers, such as peaker plants, which are primarily diesel oil to create electricity. BEST results in a more efficient energy grid and reduces the impact on the environment. As mentioned previously, LIPR has identified this area as an area of need for BEST, and this property in particular, being a suitable site due to its location to the existing substation approximately 1,100 feet to the east. This, coupled with the showing that the proposed facility will have no significant impacts, as confirmed by the negative declaration issued by the planning board, mandates that this application for an exemption from the moratorium be granted. The last part of the exemption process is to review the hardship and unique circumstances for the applicant, which do not generally apply throughout the town, and a finding that the grant of an exemption will be in harmony with and will not be unduly disruptive to the goals and purposes of the assessment undertaken pursuant to this chapter. As I mentioned previously, the application has been going on for nearly 3 years, with the first hearing the applicant had with the planning board held in February 10th of 2022. The applicant has invested over $2 million in support of this project, including but not limited to engineering, environmental review, payments to NISO for this project. All of this has been done in good faith, based upon the town's adopted zoning code, which would permit a best facility in the R60 zone upon a showing of compliance with the special exception requirements. The applicant has prepared all necessary documents and coordinated with local town and county agencies to ensure that all requirements would be met. The time and monetary commitment made by the applicant, based on the adopted zoning code, is clear evidence of a hardship, as the moratorium has now delayed the project for over a year. The applicant's submission to the planning board, including the expanded environmental assessment, engineering plans, and petition for special exception permit, show complete compliance with the necessary requirements for the planning board to approve the special exception permit and the site plan. The failure of the planning board to do so was inaccurate and hypothetical fears based on a vocal minority. Their claims are not based upon facts and science, but rather on emotion and fear. While BESS is a relatively new technology, it is not unlike the telecommunication poles of only a couple decades ago, where similar fears, we all remember, were raised. However, we have come to see that those fears, like these, are unfounded and not based upon fact or science. Clearly, the applicant has faced and continues to face a significant hardship due to the moratorium. And to speak of the unique circumstances that do not apply throughout the town, this is the only application, to my knowledge, that was under review by the town and the planning board when the moratorium was adopted. To that end, the moratorium was focused solely on this application and this property. So the applicant opposed the planning board, the second planning board meeting, right? The applicant opposed the planning board adjourning the last public hearing that was held on June 8th of 2023. The applicant also opposed the moratorium and each of the extensions, including the extension that is on the board's agenda for this evening. The applicant requested that this application be exempted from the moratorium prior to its adoption, based upon the recommendation of the Suffolk County Planning Commission in its August 2nd, 2023 staff report. All of these efforts have been ignored by the planning board and the town board. There is no basis for the applicant to remain in this moratorium. This application must be exempted and allowed to return to the planning board for a public hearing to make a final determination on the merits of the application. The project is too important to the town of Southampton to remain on pause any longer. So finally, the presentation you have just heard clearly satisfies the statutory criteria for an exemption from the moratorium to permit the application to be finalized by the planning board. It is imperative to recognize that our intentions and actions have consistently been in line with both legal standards and community welfare. The planning board's refusal to allow the finalization of our land use, despite comprehensive compliance and good faith efforts, represents an egregious violation of our client's rights. Based upon the foregoing, we request that this board grant our client's request for an exemption from the BESS moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
This concludes our presentation. I'm sure there are going to be some comments. So to the extent that we so desire, I would assume the board would allow.
I just had one.
Sure.
You said in your statement that these BESS need to be in the community that they serve. So are you saying the 100 megawatts of storage is needed for the Hampton Bays community?
I think that there was a finding, and Gus can probably give us more detail, by LIPA that the community needs this source of energy.
The Hampton Bays community
Needs 100 megawatts.
needs 100 megawatts.
The local area.
Needs
The
100 megawatts. Is that what you're saying?
That's what he's saying.
So anyway, that concludes our presentation. To the extent that we'd like to respond to any of the comments that are made by the public,
Yeah,
I hope
if you
you'd
could.
allow us to do that, or to respond in writing, which may even be better. Thank you.
No, we can't.
All right.
No.
right, so we do have several cards. I'm going to remind everyone that even though the applicant had as much time as he needed, we need to limit our comments to 3 minutes because there's so many people who want to speak, so we want to give everybody the opportunity. So the clerk will give a reminder at 2.5 minutes that you have 30 seconds left, and please, let's keep it to where it needs to be. The first comments are from Bridget Mayer.
Do you want to do what Jay used to do and tell the next person who's up so they can get ready?
Okay, and Marion, if you want to get up, you're okay.
But now you know you're next. Okay.
No delays.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Bridget.
Just to start, for the gazillionth time,
Please identify
we're not
yourself for the
Oh, can you hear me?
Please identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bridget Marr, Hampton Bays.
Thank you.
To start, I just want to say for the gazillionth time, we are not opposed to renewable solutions, green solutions. It's the siting of this particular BESS facility that we have been concerned about. Okay. My chronology is going to start a little later than Mr. Archer's, but I cover some of the same things. I came into this in April of 2023. And at that meeting, Canal Southampton BESS came before the planning board and indicated they were ready to get started on the North Road BESS. The planning board disagreed and asked for more information and sent Canal BESS, Southampton BESS, off to do some homework. That was the first, whoa, hold your horses. They returned on June 8th, and the planning board was still dissatisfied with some of the answers and felt there were still more questions, and it was adjourned. Woe number 2. The next woe came in July of 23 after 3 BESS failures occurred in New York, and the governor put together an interagency task force to review fire and safety measures. The fourth woe came about a month later when the town of Southampton imposed a 6-month moratorium on all BESS development until further analysis could be done. During that time, just 2 asides, and I'm sorry, Mr. Hadidi, you did say, and I really appreciated it at that April 27th meeting, that you sympathized with us. Later on in July, Mr. Schneiderman retracted something, and he said he really didn't realize the significance of these facilities, and he would not want to live near one. Those 2 things are just an aside. For over a year, the residents of Hampton Bays have respectfully provided essential information that had not been fully considered before, even though there were 2 negative decks, which apparently is a rubber stamp situation. Environmental concerns were raised, such as the site's proximity to the Shinnecock Canal and within a half a mile of Mashut Beach, a popular family recreational area. Noise pollution, a significant issue, has never been clearly quantified. Emergency responder training had barely been touched upon. Evacuation considerations at the narrowest choke point have never been fully discussed. Decommissioning responsibilities are still vague, and so on.
30 seconds.
The BESS Steering Committee is demonstrating the type of leadership that has been needed since the Planning Board's initial woe. The Steering Committee is discussing appropriate zoning and size constraints. They are mapping out and examining the actual proximity to homes, hospitals, schools, and recreational areas. They are considering evacuation routes. They are digging into the workings of the grid and its capacity limitations. They are outlining strict requirements for emergency responder training.
3 minutes.
This work is long overdue, and it's greatly appreciated. Given all that has been proposed by the BESS Steering Committee, the North Road BESS cannot be exempt, and it should not even move forward at this location. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Marion Bowden, and next up would be Lauren Ross.
As you said, Marion Bowden, Hampton Bays. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. First, I'd like to toss out something I can't prove, but I have a suspicion. Was the town in any way, shape, or form approached by the developers of Canal BESS or any of their representatives before the zoning was amended? Because the zoning was R. It's a residential zone, and nobody would have anticipated a BESS facility in that site. I also want to, it doesn't belong in a residential area. Everything I've ever checked says this should be an industrial area, and they have claimed, erroneously I will say, that this is an isolated industrial area. I have a town map that's 15 to 20 years old, which means it probably has more homes than you'll see here. I put an asterisk where this facility will go. Every black dot represents a house right around there. And it shows you where Mashut Beach is. It shows you where. I'd like you to pass it, but I want it back. It's the only one I think in existence. It's important. Okay, it doesn't belong in a residential area. It doesn't belong near our bays. It doesn't belong near our canal. It does not belong near our marinas. It does not belong near our recreational areas, especially Mashut Beach. I believe that the negative deck was issued based on deficient, deceptive, and incomplete and faulty information. And I think that what Bridget said about the planning board kind of proves that. The fact that it was called an isolated industrial area. I mean, the fact that we didn't know so much about what we knew. And I have to give full credit. I was going to save this to last, but everybody here is paid, the paid experts. This group of people has forfeited thousands of hours of their time voluntarily to save our community. And I'm not talking about Hampton Bays. If you saw the traffic coming into Hampton Bays from the east tonight, the line of cars ran from before the canal all the way as far as I got into the heart of town. What are you going to do to get the EMTs, which will be trained, to the incident? Do we have the 69th paratroopers on call that they will paratroop in the EMTs? Because I don't know how the heck anybody expects them to get there at this narrow choke point, and the narrowest, I think, on Long Island, possibly. Anyway, I think the fact that it's called Canal Bess says something. It's not called North Road West. Sometimes it's called North Road West. And I have another problem about who owns this? Who is ultimately responsible? It seems like those Russian nesting dolls, there's an LLC inside an LLC inside an LLC inside an LLC inside. And if anything goes wrong, who the heck is going to be responsible for this darn thing? Anyway, I hope, anyway,
3
again,
minutes.
thank you very much. Thank you. And I think you will check the information. You'll see it's been deceptive all along, from minute one.
Okay, so next up is
Janice.
Lauren Ross, and next up after that is Kristen Millenhouse.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak a few minutes. My name is Lauren Ross. I live in Hampton Bays, right in the area that we're discussing, and I have a number of questions for you. Why would you not want to extend a moratorium in the absence of a great many of the information here that is still missing? You really need to take the time to get these reports from the various agencies and get the 15 proposed recommendations and find out if they're really helpful and applicable. So I would ask you to consider extending the moratorium even further, because these things take time and they are untested. And finally, let me say that the governor has introduced several statements about this kind of hazard that we need to examine very, very carefully and take seriously. And we need more time to understand it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. And we are certainly looking at the governor's recommendations. All right, so Kristen Millenhausen, and next would be Gail Lombardi.
Good evening. So for anybody who might not know, many may be new to this group or new to this room, we as a community have
Excuse
been
me,
here.
could you identify yourself? for the
Oh,
record,
Kristen
please?
Millenhausen, sorry, Hampton Bays. We've been coming to meetings. I have been participating since June 8th Planning Board, and that was my first introduction to everything that was going on in our community. I know Mr. Archer stated very clearly on Zoom a bit ago, life happens. And that was a great thing to say. Life does happen. We had flooding on North Road last summer. We submitted several documented pictures of that. We were not allowed to submit video. All of that runoff went downstream into our canal. Our canal connects two pristine waterways. We are the baymen in Hampton Bays, but we're fighting this fight to get what the steering committee is doing appropriated for all of the township. This is not just about us and Canal. What's happening and what happened with this proposal was not really in the state of awareness for our community. Those postcards you sent out, those thousands of postcards went out last spring, not at the inception of this project. So it was like a day late and a dollar short. I personally went door to door to thousands of people last summer. Thousands of hours of my time obtaining signatures. They did not know of this. So to say that you've done due diligence beforehand is not appropriate. And life does happen. We just had a fatality on North Road. The traffic is insane. I was driving eastbound and stuck in traffic right over that site last week because there was a very bad accident eastbound. And I thought to myself, wow, what if there was a situation at this time of day and hundreds of cars could be in an off-gassing situation? I work in healthcare. I think of the health and safety first of anything. So to come up here and say that someone said it wasn't residential, Mr. Petrakis, this is a residential area. There are a lot of homes around, and we have a lot of people who are homebound. So how do you get rescue personnel from Southampton, East Quogue maybe, Hampton Bays to this site when we're already in a traffic jam situation? Mr. McCardle is here. We have a whole traffic mitigation task force. So please understand that this is not something that we're not being provincial and we're not being with the times. We understand that best facilities are coming, but the steering committee is doing due diligence to make sure these are appropriated in the correct areas for the township, because it is affecting this neighborhood, but as a whole, we are fighting for all of Southampton Township. It's audacious what's going on here.
And after Gail, it's Bob Tyson.
Gail?
Yes, good evening. My name is Gail Lombardi from Hampton Bays. I'm opposed to this site being excluded from the moratorium. This site is the poster child for the irrational and arbitrary zoning decision of this town board. It is not the people that are irrational and arbitrary. It was the decision of the town board to put the zoning in place. And even the developer the attorney for the developer specifically said, you cannot look to the comprehensive plan for the zoning. And by law, this town should have made zoning based on the comprehensive plan. He admitted that it should be null and void. So your starting point is that your town zoning should be null and void. Your now steering committee is looking for new zoning, and then you decide where the sites are. You don't decide where the sites are first, put it in zoning, and then come up with a climate action plan to back up your zoning.
Hey, Gail.
Yeah.
Hey, Gail.
I mean, I am not an attorney.
Hey.
I am not a secret expert.
Hey, Gail.
Yes,
Excuse
yes,
me.
dear.
It's the prior town board.
I agree, and I thank this. I agree. I thank this town board for getting their heads out of wherever the other town board members were. I really, that is my main points. I mean, we all know, sadly, some of us have been in our heads buried in stuff like this for 10 years and have watched the irrational and arbitrary decisions of the prior board's zoning. And I thank this board for taking this on in a very difficult situation because we're halfway down the pike and having to clean up the mess of the prior board. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
And after Bob Tyson will be Jean Bro.
Good evening, Town Board. My name is Bob Tyson. I live in Hampton Bays. And up front, I would like to ask for whatever time it takes me to finish this. I promise to be as brief as I can, but I'm a little aged and I don't speak as fast as I used to, and I want to complete my thought, if I may. All right? It's good to be here again. You should deny the request, period. Okay? I believe Mr. Archer behaved in a rude and unprofessional manner at the June 25th meeting. His actions showed no regard for the inconvenience to everyone else. He and his client are selfishly motivated by greed, dismissing safety. Let me digress. Not too long ago, a developer wanted to put up a sewage treatment facility on Cemetery Road. This attempt was financially beneficial to the developer. He was, and still is, not a friend and neighbor. Fortunately, this plan did not happen. The fact that Mr. Archer, on behalf of an energy arbitrage company, is requesting an exception to the moratorium is a clear warning. He is not a friend and neighbor. This request is disingenuous. BESS is considered a solution to renewable energy fluctuations only if it is used in concert with the solar, wind, or hydropower. Pairing battery storage with solar creates a comprehensive, efficient, and renewable energy system. Deny request because the current proposal does not meet the philosophical requirements of a green BESS facility. Standalone BESS is not green. Standalone BESS uses grid-edge energy to cool a facility in the summer and to heat it in the winter. In summer, the noise will force neighbors to shut their windows and use their air conditioning, using more energy and increasing their electric bill. It's puzzling how the prior board could have approved this application. Perhaps the partner could partner with PSE&G. An example in New Jersey is Highland Park Solar Storage System built by PSE&G. It is 2,000 kilowatts of storage along with 605 kilowatt solar farm.
30 seconds.
I'll be done shortly. If this green plan is truly necessary for the town of Southampton, they should site it in a safe place. The current application is clearly dangerous to its neighbors. I have faith this board will deny this request for exception and continue to put the safety of its citizens before the greed of this applicant. Deny this request in a manner that will put it to rest. Let me digress again. By the way, since Sag Harbor is in the town of Southampton and would benefit from a green project, wouldn't the village dump be a great site for a solar storage facility?
4 minutes.
Adjacent to current grid? Councilman Scavone, perhaps you could lead that initiative.
Please wrap up your comments.
Get into it.
No, we really have to get equal time for every single individual who's
I
here.
can appreciate that. I have a couple of questions that I would like the board to pass on to the applicant.
You could submit that to the clerk.
Well,
Can I donate my time to him?
It,
that's okay.
unfortunately-
That's okay. I'm going to complete it. Not a problem. Okay. That gentleman had an hour and 5 minutes.
Yes,
Okay, and
but
I understand he's an applicant, but I was here a month ago, and he did not show up, and I was prepared to speak, and I'm going to complete my presentation now. I will be done very shortly, okay?
5 minutes.
Board Member Pell, you did not get an answer for where the water goes. I would like you to pursue that question. I would like any board member to ask the question, how do you put a fire out? How do you put a best fire out? Okay? I would also say that the so-called expert is disingenuous in representing himself as a possible firefighter from New York. All right? That is an insult to all firefighters, okay? I bet the job that you had was like sweeping out a floor or something like that. You're definitely not a firefighter.
You know what? You have to direct your comments to the board,
I beg your
not the
pardon.
audience.
I beg your pardon, okay?
It's 6 minutes now.
I believe that the board should extend the moratorium. I believe that the moratorium should last until a comprehensive plan is drafted. New code needs to protect persons and property. New code needs to protect the environment. BESS without green power has no environmental benefit. The drain is still coming from the grid with the only benefit is profit for the BESS owners. Standalone BESS is not town-encouraged green energy. The moratorium of the existing code should last forever. I trust the board to do the right thing. I believe that the current town law regarding BESS facilities contains inaccurate information. This law should be abolished in favor of new legislation. A standalone BESS does not deter the use of fossil fuels and does nothing to move the town closer to reduced emission goals as a climate-smart community. I believe new BESS legislation must and required be accompanied with a renewable energy facility. The current proposed plan does nothing to further Governor Hochul's New York State Climate Action Plan. The proposed plan is a leech on the grid, sucking energy and selling it for profit. I thank the board for the extra time.
Jean Brophy, you're next, and after that, Philip Metzger.
I'm going to give up my time.
You're not ready to speak, that's fine.
You can't do
Hi.
No, you're not.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I've come to many of these meetings and I haven't spoken, but I believe that
Identify yourself. for
my
the
name
record,
is
please.
Jean Brophy,
Thank you.
and I live at 16 Madison Avenue, which is less than 1/8 of a mile from the site that you're talking about. So I feel that I'm a guinea pig, and for the last at least year and a half, I have to live with the worry that there's going to be the best energy storage system right next to my house. And I deal every day with the traffic on North Road, and it's impossible. They must think that if something goes wrong, that it's going to be in the middle of the night, because you can't get from Hampton Bays to Southampton in the morning, and you can't get from Southampton to Hampton Bays in the afternoon. So I don't know when the fire trucks would be able to come. I have to laugh because I think the only way that we would be able to get out of our house and get away from the best fire would be to run over and jump into the Mashut Beach. I don't see how we would get away. So I just wanted to be a witness to the fact that this is definitely a residential area and it's not appropriate, and the moratorium should be extended, but I hope at some point that we have an end to it, that this is denied, because I can't live forever with it hanging over my head.
Thank you. You know, the task force is, we are at the steering for solutions, and we hope to get that done, you know, in the next several months, but we did need the extension to finish what we're doing. Ray D'Angelo, that is the last. Ray.
No. Oh, did some of you put in cards maybe for the moratorium extension instead of the
3 minutes, right?
Because someone spoke in
Ray D'Angelo, I'm the president of the Hampton Bay Civic Association. And I need my glasses. The Hampton Bay Civic Association is opposed to the granting of an exemption from the moratorium for Canal Southampton. I'm going to read a letter that was approved by our membership. I'm here as the president of the Hampton Bay Civic Association to again state to the board the overwhelming sentiment of the Hampton Bay Civic Association membership that an industrial best facility not be placed in be placed in a remote commercial zones, not in areas close to residential communities. We recognize the work of the town steering committee that is considering the matter, and we are encouraged by the discussions that they have been held. To the credit of the town board, this town board, the knowledgeable input of local citizens is now being considered and has been factored into the board's decision-making process. That's these good people here. It is clearly not in the best interest of Hampton Bays or any other locale to place industrial-sized best facilities in places that are near people's houses, schools, medical facilities, and pristine waterways and major road checkpoints. The proposed facility on North Road, for example, would expose homes, businesses, a major road checkpoint, and a popular recreation area to the dangers of a systems failure and resulting fire incident. There's also the important issue of noise pollution. These things do make noise, and the effect on residents and local wildlife. Documented noise complaints are in the record from residents near where BEST facilities have been in place around the globe. Our objection to BEST has always been based on the concern for the safety of the members of the Hampton-based community. And that's what the final decision should be made by you guys, the safety of these people. That's what you were elected for. That's what you took your oath of office for, the safety of these people. Not for, this is a money-making operation. The number one concern should be for their safety. That's the only thing you guys should consider. We cannot solve one problem by creating another dangerous situation. The safety of the residents of our community should always be the number one concern of the town board. Let's conclude the BEST debacle that was based on misinformation once and for all. Industrial bests belong in remote commercial locations, and we need a final zoning decision to seal the deal. I just want to have some notes here. They're engineering expert. I don't think he, in fairness to him, he said he worked for the fire department. He didn't say he was a firefighter. I'm a retired New York City firefighter. The problem with these fires is that what he was proposing is, the current thinking is that you let them burn themselves out. And while they're burning, they generate their own oxygen. And the problem with them is the long duration of this operation. It could be days that you have a presence there and watch this thing burn itself out. So it's not a quick thing. When he was talking about use of water, that would be to cool surrounding areas so they don't get light up. And the second thing he mentioned was pica units being used, oil generating or diesel fuel to operate these pica units. They're usually gas turbines. They're natural gas turbines, not oil. So in essence, he was saying, which you have to consider, their recommendation is to let these things burn themselves out, which could take literally days, and this is a choke point. So what's going to happen to the communities out here? No one's going to be able to go back and forth past these fire incidences. So I hope you can take that into consideration. Again, I hope you can correct the mistakes of the former board. We have a lot of confidence in you guys, and thank you very much for your time.
All right, Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak
We have
at this public
we have other
hearing?
people here that don't have cards in for. Yeah,
I think they mixed up
I think they
their
mixed them
hearings.
with the extend moratorium engineering.
Can we put them to the moratorium?
Well, they want to weigh in on this.
Well, okay, I don't know whose card is about it, but if somebody filled out a card for this, they thought it was this public hearing, this is number 4 that we're on.
We're on number 4.
4 and 5. Well, if you just raise your hand if you wanted to speak on this. Okay.
In response to the.
This is on the exemption, not the extension.
Exemption, not the extension. Okay,
come up and identify yourself.
Oh boy, you're working in the right direction now.
Hello.
As much as I can.
I'm Bill Muir.
Can you get behind the, sorry.
Certainly, thank you. Yes, please. I'm Bill Muir. I'm part of the wildlife that is going to be endangered by this facility. Let me, just as a point of illustration, it was said that no one had complained because of these fires and no one had been endangered. Well, in fact, the nearest resident to this was about 3/4 of a mile away. They did chase everyone away within a mile. So I think that there were about 6 residents within a mile. And they were inconvenienced, but they really were not endangered within a mile. If I could bring this to the board's attention, this is the fire in upstate New York. It's on a solar farm. Now, if this were to happen in Hampton Bays, this would be Miss Marr's house would be about here.
And the truck would be up on Sunrise Highway, about 200 feet away.
And it would be the truck, and they pulled this truck away out. By the way, it is 200 feet away. Just to give you some scale. Now, it's been said that the nearest house is 400 feet away. It's 400 feet away if the fire is polite enough to go down the road, make a turn, and come back, and then go into the neighborhood. It's closer to 100 if it decides to jump the fence and go wherever the wind is blowing. It just is misinformation. By the way of misinformation, Mr. Archer said we could get a standpipe in the canal and we'd have all the water we need. Well, he's not really aware of the chemistry in an ion battery, because salt water would spread the fire, would cause it to leap and go to different directions. Also, there were 4 fires in New York. I won't belabor it, but there were 2 in one site that happened 2 days in a row. My point is, every one of these facilities had been underwriter, laboratory, proven. Everybody in all the varying townships around it had been assured by all the dancing bears that were sent in to tell them, don't worry, just as we have been this evening. All the experts for hire were there. Their billing rates were all taken care of. Our billing rate is considerably lower. We're not getting paid to tell you this. That the town is doing the right thing right now. You're going with the best steering committee. You're looking at it thoroughly. You're developing your own information. You are not reacting to a proposition by what is basically a speculative operation that goes all the way back to a hedge fund in Singapore. And I'm sure they have wonderful motives, but at the bottom of it, this is a money-making deal. And it's much better to pursue it the way that the town is pursuing it, and that is you start out with what is best for the town rather than trying to force fit this thing into a residential neighborhood in Hampton Bays. And thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
So, is there anybody else that wanted to speak at the 4th public hearing on?
Yes, hi. Good evening to all, and thank you for all of your efforts in the steering committee, etc. I do appreciate it, and I know it's not easy. And thank you for letting me speak. My name is Roger Moores from the Hampton Bays community, and I just wanted to say that Mr. Archer did an admirable job of listing all of the things on paper that he has supposedly come to terms with and satisfied requests. However, the premises in the beginning of all of this that I've been in all of these meetings and listening to was sounded that it was of questionable circumstances that boards, such as prior boards, made decisions on, not knowing the facts yet, on a brand new technology. I also say it's wonderful that he snuck his permits or requests for permits under the wire before everybody could figure it out. I do agree with one of my previous compatriots here of that we should be zoning first and reviewing second. This should never be in a choke point of downtown Hampton Bays. It's not, I know this is about the moratorium extension, but I also want to keep bringing back to the general concept of this entire thing, which I cannot wrap my head around. The idea of this 100-watt being in this area with containers that melt under 2,000 degrees, because I'm sure there's no metal that does that, to be in the guy next 10 feet away from the one that's on fire, which they're saying let it burn out, to have the water run downhill into the oyster beds or clam beds, to be taking salt water as an electrolyte to help put it out, which will magnify things. I don't understand. I guess 300 feet from homes, that's nothing. And he claims that that's the closest home. I'm sure we have other people here who are living closer than 300 feet at this point in time. The expected lifespan, also looking into the future for something this, the expected lifespan of these containers. What happens then? Who takes it away? Who brings in a new one? In previous dissertations, we've heard that some people have said they're about $95,000 per battery unit. There are 2 units in each of these containers with 74, I believe, of these containers. Also to be mentioned that I learned tonight that now the cooling towers or things that will keep each of these units cool are what makes the noise, and they're perched on top so that their sound, I don't know if it was taken in concert with other sounds in the neighborhood as to what the overall din will be.
30
but
seconds.
It's in addition to it. The also thing is, I just want to call attention to the need for some of these safeguards that our paid fire department spokesperson for Mr. Archer doesn't show the highlight for safety, but it rather shows that somebody considered they were necessary in the first place.
3 minutes.
Think about that. Anyway, we shouldn't be based on emotion, as Mr. Archer said, but fact. But the other thing I just want to say is the best science, the best Secret Service in the world just had a damn big mistake. Here we are. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Drosdorf. I live in Hampton Bays as well. The issue here is really safety, energy management, environment, and particularly location. Location is the whole issue here. This is a residential area, and the fumes that will be generated are much too close to a resident to not be considered. Gentleman talked about what happens in a fire. Well, you release hydrogen, you release methane, you release hydrofluoric acid, you release hydrogen cyanide, you release a whole bunch of very dangerous and, I might add, water-soluble chemicals, also sulfur dioxide. These fires are hard to put out. EV car fires take hours to put out in huge quantity of waters. Best facility fires take days or weeks to put out. Water doesn't put them out. Water just lowers the temperature so they can slow the reaction down. What burns is the off gases. These things are hard to contain. They're hazardous fires. At the last looking, the nearest hazmat facility is almost an hour away in Yaphank. You have a 4-foot fence or a 6-foot fence that's remotely operated. How do you get people to fight the fire when it starts? These are questions have to be asked and they have to be answered. And right now we're getting a lot of runaround and a lot of games. It comes down to safety, and it comes down to safety in a residential area that is R60 is still residential. It should not be here. Put it in an area that's more remote. No one's saying we don't want to support the concept, but we don't want it in a residential area. So I'll leave it at that.
Gail Murcott from Hampton Bays. I think I have 5 there because that's what we were told to put down. First of all, I would like to thank the board for the moratorium and also for, doing your due diligence on this whole thing. I don't want to speak to the safety issues because everybody's already done that, and everybody does want to go home at some point tonight. But what I would like to ask you to do is to not allow their exception. There's no reason for their exception. I know they have hardships. I feel bad that they've spent all that money. Not so, but they need to just stop. Don't look at here anymore because the community does not want that to happen. And I think they just need to move on and work with the town or the state or whoever and look for a suitable location. Not in someone's backyard, not in someone else's, but, but somewhere where it wouldn't hurt anyone. As my brother-in-law said, you have the Secret Service. We watched people take down not only the Twin Towers, but also the Pentagon. They never said, they talk about their little containments and everything else. They never said, can someone come in with a bomb and blow this up, which is not going to contain it to the one little battery. So, there are many things that can happen besides the little way that this stops this and then stops that. So I would just like to ask the board to please not allow their exception, and hopefully down the road, we can get something done that everybody's in agreement to. Thank you for the time.
Steve Crispinelli, Hampton Bays. I think you can boil Mr. Archer's presentation down to 2 elements. One was the strength of law he claims supports his exemption, and besides the exemption of law, he also defends the fact that he spent $2 million. Part of that went to his firm. He got reimbursed by the client. So we should be suffering because he only made $2 million. He should make a lot more. And the issue of law, let me give you a quote. The replacement of morality and conscience with law is the beginning of the end. And replacing conscience and law with law here, putting people in danger, doesn't make sense. My wife can't walk from here to across there, and I live 400 feet away from this thing. It's dangerous. It shouldn't be there. It should be in a place that's safe. We should be safe. And Mr. Archer is worried about his next fee that he wants to make. Hopefully he'll get it. But don't defend yourself by going by law. You made mistakes. The city made mistakes. The moratorium is designed to reflect the fact that we made mistakes, so we have to make changes. We're making changes, and you're out. You made a speculative venture.
Mr. Crispinelli.
The speculative venture failed.
Please
Go
address
out.
the board, not the audience.
Pardon me?
Please address the board, not the audience.
Okay. Let me repeat.
No.
It was a speculative operation.
I think they got it.
You did hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. Since you heard it, I won't repeat it. Thank you very much. I think Sag Harbor is a good place for this.
Okay, sorry. That's fine. We'll put it forward.
Thank you. Aileen McPhailin from Hampton Bays. Madam Supervisor and all council people, I truly appreciate the fact that you have taken the time to try to learn more, to listen to the residents, and to come to a better decision-making process. I don't think you're there yet because I don't think enough has been presented to you yet. I feel like we would still be guinea pigs if you were to allow this to come to completion. And we are more valuable than guinea pigs. So I do not live where most of the people live who are against this. I live on the other side of town. I've lived in Hampton Bays for 43 years of my life. I know almost all of the streets in that town. I don't think there was a place in Hampton Bays where you could put this safely. I don't know if there's a place in the whole township of Southampton. So I think you really need to consider more, that maybe this just can't happen, even though somebody's put a lot of time and money into wanting it to happen, maybe for the wrong reasons. I do have a question. Has the town board or the planning board had an engineer that is not employed by the business person to give you answers? A legit engineer who understands best facilities to answer your questions. Have they brought anybody in and asked those questions that you need answered?
As part of the steering committee, they have people from all aspects and agencies and privately they're all coordinating together to get answers.
Thank you very much for that answer. The other part, somebody said Hampton Bays, I think they said tonight, will benefit. A couple of months ago, I asked, does Hampton Bays benefit from the storage, from the electricity? And they said, no. Y'all said, no, Hampton Bays does not benefit first and foremost. It might eventually somehow. But it's there, and yet we don't get first priority of what it's producing if it can, safely. Thank you.
All right, well, that's it for the live comments. And Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom who has any, who'd like to speak? Okay. Bring them on.
To this, Hampton Bays.
Hello. Hi.
I'm a retired engineer.
What's your name?
Sorry?
What, could you repeat your name, please?
Tip Berlin, Berolin.
Thank you.
I'm also a member of the Sustainability Advisory Committee, other not-groups and representative of the committee. Based on my reading and study of the risks and benefits of best installation, I support continuation of the moratorium. I understand this is the earlier hearing, but I don't believe they can be separated. Assuming that this period is used to make a reasoned decision on the requirements for where the best installation should be sited, I believe that there's an extra risk from this installation because of the toxicity of the combustion products, as someone earlier mentioned, and the difficulty of extinguishing best fires. Specifically, highly toxic gases are released by lithium-ion battery cars. The recommended fire extinguishing response is to let it burn out, i.e. there appears to be no rapid way to extinguish this fire. That should be considered in any siting requirements, including perhaps a change to the zoning code. The town should ensure that the proposed design for the BESS system has been peer reviewed, as recommended by the New York State Interagency Fire Safety Working Group, appointed by Governor Hochul. We should also ensure that we have an emergency response plan, as also recommended by the working group, and we should only move forward after NYSERDA has acted on the 15 recommendations in the working group report. That's the end of my testimony. Thank you.
Kevin, is there anyone else on Zoom?
That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
I can't hear.
3 minutes.
So, I know the hour's getting late. Can I make a suggestion? And that is, I think our preference was to be to respond. Sorry, would to be respond in writing. So if we could, if your goal is to close the hearing for tonight, then please leave the record open for, let's say, 2 weeks, to allow for additional responses.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
He's asking if we close the public hearing tonight, but leave the record open for written comment for 2 more weeks.
Oh, tonight, we're here 20 times already.
We don't have a resolution on for adoption. Or we can't.
No, the board
There's a
needs to
whole-
deliberate properly.
Just say no. All right, so, thank you. And, given that, then I move to close the public hearing and leave it open for written comment for 2 weeks.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I want to give them time to leave if they want to really stay.
They're going to stay for the moratorium extension.
They're not going to speak again.
Right, no one's leaving. Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice for the 5th public hearing?
Public hearing number 5, to consider extending Southampton Town.
Can we just
Code.
give everybody a second to leave if they want to leave?
They were leaving.
Okay.
Probably, yeah. She's taking a moment.
Yes. We have a resolution on
Later
tonight.
on, it's not, not in this portion, later. That's entirely up to you. If you've already spoken, that's up to you.
That's why I asked for them both to be on the same night, because I figured you'd be here anyway, so.
You should close the door though, because if you're gonna talk in the hall, it's
Yeah.
gonna be distracting.
All right.
Can we just ask that you close the door if they're gonna be speaking in the hall? Thank you.
Okay, are we ready now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Continue.
May we have quiet, please, in the audience? Public hearing number 5, to consider extending Southampton Town Code, Chapter 314, entitled Moratorium on Battery Energy Storage Systems, by amending Section 314-4, entitled Moratorium Period, to extend for another 6-month period.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Janice Scherer, Town Planning and Development Administrator. As you've heard from everyone, and you know yourselves, the steering committee has been working toward some solutions for placement of these battery storage system, tiering them for the reviews. We heard tonight that the other applications sort of skipped over and got into a large scale ISO New York State. That's the grid operator agreement. We're still in like the smaller tiers that we're talking about, and we really need to understand what that means, because standalone storage facilities may not be just for the sake of pulling energy off the grid, storing it, and selling it back, and not tied to a community distributed generation plan with a solar facility or something that gives back community benefits. So we're really working on all of this. As you know, anyone who can participate, watch our meetings, and we've been to the Suffolk County Planning Commission, who supports the extension, and have also the Planning Board as well. And you have those two reports and resolutions in your record.
Janice, I just want to commend you and your office and Seth for the work that you're doing
Thank
with the steering committee, with the work in partnership with Supervisor Moore and Councilwoman McNamara. I've observed those meetings. I know that there's a lot of thought going into that and a lot of time, and I think this is a great benefit to the public that these are being held. I think also your point about is the system going to generate community benefit is a really major question. And how that's going to work is also an enormous question as well. Another observation that I've had from these steering committees, which by the way is a result of the moratorium, the moratorium is really to allow the town, and correct me if I'm wrong, the municipality to figure out what next steps to take with respect to this renewable energy system, correct?
That is correct. And, we've learned a lot as well. And we commend the community for bringing a lot to our attention.
Yeah.
And over time have changed our thoughts toward things. And there's nothing wrong with everyone evolving, including planners and politicians and community people. So we're all trying to
build synergy,
work it out together.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think it's a very democratic, small d democratic approach. I also want to just kind of touch base on one of the other observations, another task of the steering committee, which is fire safety as well. I think public safety director sits on the steering committee. Is there, and I know NYSERDA came to one of your meetings, is that correct? Or
Many
meetings, right? And obviously a lot of battery storage is being advanced by NYSERDA to achieve renewable energy goals for the state, right? There's a region-wide effort. With that region-wide effort, however, the working group that was put together by the governor to kind of take a look at this holistically, within the recommendations that they've published, those recommendations are in some way calling for a universalization of fire safety procedures. Therefore, that being that it's not just one isolated fire department that has to come up with a plan. There needs to be a region-wide fire safety response.
Yes, and it really depends on the size. They've said they're on this grid scale, and where you're on high voltage lines, transmission lines, distribution, substation. All of this has like different bearings on what's going to happen here, and I think that it's important to understand that. And as you know, we've had PSCG and LIPA on our steering committee calls, and they're comfortable with smaller, 5 megawatt systems like you see out in Amagansett or wherever that is, Wainscott. We don't have to jump to it. We didn't, there's a lot of like, there was all this conspiracy. We didn't know someone was going to come in with 100 megawatt, and what that would mean, and then all the fires and everything from there. So the committee has been like, let's take a more incremental approach to this, smaller scale, understand what, where this belongs, and then, see how that goes before we just jump to the next level. So,
and my last and final question,
Yeah.
in your conversations with Suffolk County, they were okay with this moratorium?
100%.
Okay.
No opposition at all.
Thank you.
Because they understand that those recommendations haven't come out yet. We're still working through. Of course, they want me to come back in 3 months to share our progress, but we are, leading the way for other municipalities who are only just embarking on their moratoriums.
And there are several that have embarked on that.
Oh, yeah.
Recently.
Thank you.
Recently.
After
So
we
we're
started
trying
ours.
to sort of create a process and procedure where we can hear all these different voices, LIPA, NYSERDA, our own concerns. We still didn't get to the part where we're going to talk to Suffolk County Fres, like those, we have Ryan Murphy and John Rankin and the chief of police talking about fire, all those are on our committee now. But we're trying to get all those perspectives and the industry perspective. We can appreciate what goes into this and why would anybody want to do this. So we're trying to get a balanced approach, yes.
Janice, at the last Suffolk County Planning Commission meeting, they were seemingly insistent on 3 months, or they wanted you to come back in 3 months, but we decided on the 6 months moratorium. In your opinion, we had this conversation, in your opinion, do you think that we could do, Southampton Town can do in 3 months what is necessary to get this done? As opposed to 6 months.
But I'd personally prefer the 6.
Mhm.
It's because when you think about it, when you schedule a public hearing, it's a month later.
Right.
So that you didn't even hear anybody for a month. And then it's another,
So for the reasons that we were saying and what Councilman Uselli said, that's why I brought up the Suffolk County training facility thing earlier tonight. 6 months is more accurate time period to.
Well, when you
But-
factor in like Christmas and the holidays and people going on vacations and things in the winter.
They ask
Right.
us to just check in 3 months. They're
Yes,
not asking us
they
to
did
do
not.
it in 3 months.
No,
We've been checking in every 3 months or
Yes,
so.
like I said, the last 6 months they
I'm not
asked me to
suggesting it.
come
I'm asking
at the
her
3-month
her
mark.
professional opinion.
The
Like-
last time we did 6 month, I came to
Mhm.
them at 3 months and said, "Here's all the maps. Here's what we're talking about. This is what we're thinking," and they appreciated that. And then now I came and said, "We need another 6 months," and they said, "Fine, just come back in 3 like you did last time." And I said, "Sure, no problem."
So we have a meeting scheduled in August, and that's again another internal meeting. It's open to the public, but it's just for those on the committee. And then in September we have a meeting that will be open to the public for them to weigh in on what we've set forward at that point. I mean, that's 2 months right there. And then, I mean, so it's going to take us some time.
And at that point, we may have the governor's next set for their working group comments to consider.
Right.
Also.
So we, but locally, what our biggest concern is and what we've been doing for the steering committee is looking at where the placement works in terms of setting it away from residential communities as is the prudent thing to do at this point until we know more.
Considering.
Yeah.
That's what we're discussing at each of the meetings.
That's what the meetings are all about. We're just going through that
We have the
local
police
zoning
chief
preference.
there. We're talking about, evacuation routes and, areas that we would need significant time to get people out of. There's a lot of issues that we're looking at. We're not just looking at one thing, and I just, it's a lot. And if you looked at Newsday's, Newsday's article was brought up tonight. It was 30 hours of continual dousing with water to put that fire out. 30 hours. And there's issues that we're dealing with, and we're a coastal community. We have, and I understand you want green energy for coastal resiliency. You want, but it's also of an extent that we have special parameters here. We have, the site that we were discussing tonight within a 1 mile radius. I mean, it's in their own documents from the fire department that a 1 mile evacuation radius encompasses Montauk Highway, Sunrise Highway, and the Long Island Railroad. So, I mean, to me, that's a high, that's for me, for the East End, would be a high profile terrorist target, because you can't get people off the East End if you put something major. So these are all things that we're dealing with the police department. I mean, we have multiple, it was brought up that we weren't engaging with an expert. We're engaging with multiple experts. At our last meeting, we had an industry person here discussing what's needed from the industry standpoint. We've had NYSERDA at every meeting. We've had LIPA at our meetings. We're doing our due diligence, and we're going to take the time that it takes to get it right this time.
That's exactly right. We're doing our due
And
diligence.
one other thing, the planning commission said that they also advocate that we embrace other municipalities and share our findings with them, so they can kind of get up to speed as we've been
I
going
actually have a
along.
question about that. What other municipalities currently are enduring a
Southold,
moratorium?
I think Smithtown just did it.
Smithtown, Huntington,
Huntington,
maybe
Oyster
Oyster
Bay.
Bay. Yeah, some western towns, and Southold being the other eastern.
Did Babylon finish?
I don't
I
know.
think they're still in.
They're
I think
still
they
in?
did a
Not
year.
certain. But anyway, we
Most
were
of them
just
did
talking
longer
about
ones.
low voltage, in terms of like you can still have a supermarket with batteries, and that's one thing, versus, a utility grid scale, up to, this large over, 20
Not
megawatts.
that we've made any determinations. We're still processing all the information.
We're just trying to understand the difference and like how that review works. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, well, I do have some cards here. The first is Lynn Murcott. Do you want to speak at this point, Lynn? She's good. Okay. All right, Casey Petrashek.
Hello, Supervisor. Hello, Board. My name is Casey Petrashek. I'm with the New York League of Conservation Voters, or NYLCV for short. Our organization promotes long-term investment and action to improve the natural environment and support the environmentally friendly energy transition. Battery energy storage systems are essential for a safe and effective energy grid. These systems have a minimal environmental impact and increase stability in the supply and cost of renewable energy sources, supplying homes and communities with clean power that is needed. By implementing battery storage systems, our energy systems will become stronger. Battery storage systems will help serve Long Island during excessive heat days, assist in replacing dirty peaker plants, and support offshore wind and solar energy initiatives. However, moratoriums and battery storage systems, like the one being discussed here today, threaten New York's progress towards a safe, clean, and reliable energy grid. A limited number of fires at battery storage facilities have brought concerns regarding the potential hazards of battery storage facilities. Asking questions is important. Also important is perspective. There are more than 5,000 facilities across the state. Only 3 have reported fires, and none of them have resulted in injuries or environmental damage. These incidents have been met with a swift and decisive action from the State Interagency Working Group and the Office of Fire and Prevention Control. The working group measured the impacts of the fire on soil, air, and water quality, included the fires resulted in no injuries and no harmful levels of toxins were detected. Additionally, the working group collaborated with national labs, leading subject matter experts, to review codes and testing and procedures for battery storage and released a set of draft recommendations for fire and battery storage safety codes. Southampton could adopt these recommendations and move this transition forward. There is no clean energy transition without BESS systems, so the greatest risk lies in not building the energy grid of the future. We ask you to put an end to this moratorium and make Southampton a beacon to other communities in the energy transition. And if you can't do that tonight, I ask you not to vote on this moratorium this evening. And for the record, I'd like to submit these letters from Southampton town residents asking you to end this battery storage moratorium. Thank you for your.
I have a question for
yes.
you. I'm not against battery storage. Okay.
Yeah.
I need more information on it, but I'm against the location of it.
You know.
If you, I listen to you. Now listen to me. Say if you lived over there, would you want it next to your house, next to your grandmother?
So we
what
don't.
Happens, what happens if there's a explosion or something, or something went wrong, and there's only 2 hospitals, one Southampton and one Riverhead.
So we don't support.
I'm not done yet.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
And there's a major problem where you have to transport people, and there's another problem out in Montauk or in East Hampton, where the hospital of Southampton is full. They can't get by because of something what's going on with that BESS moratorium. That's why it's not a right place to put it. It has to be moved away into another part of the town. That's why we're thinking about the moratorium, and we have to wait.
So we don't support any specific battery storage facility. What we advocate for is the implementation of battery storage. So moving this process along quickly so we can get to a place where we can build these facilities.
And this moratorium speaks to the entirety of the town, not just that application.
Yes.
And just in the aspect of full transparency for the board, there is an applicant currently before the town that is a corporate partner with New York League of Conservation Voters. Just want to make that clear so that everybody knows that.
I mean, BESS is a thing that is necessary for the energy transition. So we support these types of facilities.
In other words, you're like a lobbyist.
We're an advocate, and we have many, many letters from Southampton members asking you to end this moratorium.
If you give those to the clerk.
Yes, I'll be submitting them to the clerk.
All of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kristen Muhlenhausen. And on deck is Gail Lombardi.
So Kristen Muhlenhausen, Hampton Bays. I want to thank this board for really putting forth a lot of energy into creating the steering committee. I watch each meeting, and we always submit our questions and our comments because we want to be engaged, and we're very grateful for everything that you guys are doing to safeguard the community and move forward with the proposition of BESS and where they're going to go. And I thought Janice's presentation tonight was great because you kind of summed it up on kind of where it went, where we are now. And we are definitely keeping our eye on the ball. We want to continue to be engaged. And for the group that's here visiting, I'm not sure if you're locals to this community, we are not opposed to BESS, but we're opposed to how this all went down and how we could promote this safely in the future in our community. So that just about sums it up, and we're very grateful for all that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up, Jean Brophy.
Okay, so I support the moratorium, the extension of the moratorium to get it right. There is a saying, you don't find enough time to do it right the first time, but you have to find enough time to do it over. And sadly, that's the route you're in, and sad for this board. I do find offense to people outside our community who know nothing about the town of Southampton zoning, the constraints on our infrastructure, our ecosystem, making demands on what is good for the state. Now, and NYSERDA, LIPA, I work for Brooklyn Union, I do get the utilities, but your job is to protect the town of Southampton. And so it might not be what NYSERDA wants, it might not be what these gentlemen want, it might not be what LIPA wants, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for zoning for us, for the town of Southampton, because we could have a best system and yet nobody's going to want to live in the town of Southampton anymore. There's a systemic problem with the zoning, with the way you guys have been doing zoning, with the comprehensive plan. It's been very loosey-goosey, following New York state law, the case law, and the secret law. So I really commend this board, I have to say, for stepping it up. In the few months that this has been a cohesive board, including the members that came on board, it just seems a much more cohesive board trying to really follow the environmental laws, follow, what our community can sustain. And I agree with Eileen, we may not be able to find a place in Hampton Bays, much less any place in the town of Southampton. And we just have to accept that. It is what it is. We have very constrained infrastructure. So I'm hoping, and again, I thank this board also. I see you have the resolution on the board, so hopefully this time we get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Jean Brophy, and then Robert Tyson.
She's not here, Jean.
Jean's not here. Oh, okay. Robert, and then David Osorio. 3 minutes, please.
Robert Tyson, Hampton Bays. I want to thank the board for their tolerance of me the last time I spoke. I promise I'll get out of here briefly. I believe the board should extend the moratorium. I believe the moratorium should last until comprehensive zoning is drafted. South Whole Town has done well, and the Dutch have enacted impressive laws to protect their citizens. Given the limited information the prior board chose to use in their decision, new, more complete information indicates that decision was wrong. Fortunately, this board can correct that mistake. Just as a point of order, standalone BESS is not green energy. Standalone BESS is not renewable energy. And people are referring to that, and it needs to be made clear that solar, wind, and hydro is renewable energy. A battery system is not. I trust the board will do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Osorio, and after that, Jordan Christensen.
Hi, good evening, council members. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is David Osorio, and tonight I'm speaking on behalf of the Long Island Progressive Coalition, a grassroots community-based organization founded in 1979, and I'm proud to be here today as a LIPC community organizer dedicated to promoting sustainable development, revitalizing local communities, and enhancing human dignity. The team, board, and members of LIPC have seen that the Southampton's town leadership has been committed to leading on 100% clean energy, and today we urge the town council to make good on that commitment and vote no on a second extension of the town's battery storage moratorium. Taking the lead on battery storage is a matter of community safety. We are currently being held captive by our fossil fuel infrastructure, and the east end of Long Island is particularly vulnerable to the climate crisis. As heat waves, windstorms, and flooding occur with more frequency and intensity, we need resiliency from our power grid. Even outside of extreme and desperate situations, Long Island has for too long relied on polluting peaker plants, especially in the summer, to keep the power on during times of peak demand. This arrangement is not only extremely damaging for our local climate and air quality, it is also wildly expensive and inefficient. Without alternatives to our energy infrastructure, the fossil fuel industry is also happy to continue passing off costs to the ratepayers. Investing in battery energy storage systems is incredibly important to our local economy and to our community's futures. We've spoken with fire safety specialists on the subject matter who have repeatedly assured to us that the understanding of and procedures around battery energy storage have been improving year over year, and that fire concerns should not preclude or outweigh the community benefits of battery energy storage systems. The risks associated with battery storage are manageable and are no more than those associated with the energy infrastructure we already live with. I'd like to conclude by highlighting that risks around continued fossil fuel energy infrastructures are high, and that only the incorporation of battery storage can get our electricity grid to 100% clean energy. While the safety concerns around batteries are understandable, they have been actively studied and addressed by the New York State Fire Safety Working Group on battery storage, and New York State agencies stand at the ready to collaborate with local municipalities. At the same time, accumulating costs of our over-resilience on fossil fuel infrastructure is amorphous and exploitative choice. I implore the Council to end the moratorium on battery storage for the sake of grid improvements, cost saving, and the long-term safety of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Christensen. Is it Jordan?
It is Jordan. Yeah.
And next is David Mast.
Hi, I'm Jordan Christensen. I'm here representing Citizens Campaign for the Environment. So like our previous speaker, we are also very supportive of battery energy storage systems generally. We work on the local level, on the county level, on the state level to support the transition off of fossil fuels to renewable energy. We support large-scale solar, we support offshore wind, and we cannot get to either of those things without best systems to capture that energy and give it to people when they're needed. There will be times when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining, and we need battery energy storage systems to fill that gap and to stabilize the grid. They are a critical part of our clean energy transition as we move forward. We won't hit carbon-free electricity by 2040 without them. So just so everyone knows, CCE was actually supportive of the original 6-month moratorium. It's a new technology. Makes perfect sense that you would want to update zoning codes. A lot of other towns have done this. Brookhaven was one of the first. And to streamline this process, our understanding was with the goal of ultimately permitting best systems in site-appropriate and safe areas. Now that we're at the point of a 6-month extension and then another 6-month extension, what we want to make sure it doesn't happen is that this isn't just a stalling technique where we use continued moratoriums to stop moving forward with very much needed best systems, especially in Southampton, right? You have, you're on the front lines of climate change, you have climate goals that you're working towards. The South Fork is critical to move forward. You're already a renewable energy hub, so this is the perfect place for them. So we would ask that you not permit a second extension and allow some best systems to start to move forward here to support the transition. And I also wanted to just echo what NYLCV said and ask you not to vote tonight, to at least keep this open a little while longer for written comments, because we know some people in some groups that wanted to weigh in that can't be here tonight. Right, thanks so much.
David Mast. Okay, Philip Metzger. And then Ray D'Angelo after that.
So he's still here. He likes to walk around.
My name is Philip Metzger. I live in Hampton Bays. The call for an end to the BESS moratorium is the Clean Energy Group's attempt to grease the skids for the placement of an industrial-sized BESS on North Road in Hampton Bays. Talk about chutzpah. They have no problem putting an industrial-sized BESS in a residential neighborhood that they do not live in. Our Hampton Bays community position is not that such BESS be ruled out entirely. It is that they should not be placed in the vicinity of residential neighborhoods. Do not go along with this so-called clean energy group. It is a disgrace that they feel they can disregard the safety and overwhelming sentiment of the neighborhood where the BESS has been proposed. Thank you.
Ray D'Angelo.
D'Angelo, Hampton Bays. Of course, I support the extension of the moratorium, and I didn't get to this before when I was speaking. My concern is, as you know, all fire services here are composed of volunteers, and all these operations are of very long duration, and that really stresses these departments out. I mean, these guys have jobs and everything. Sometimes they're there 2, 3, 4 days, 5 days. And you also have to remember that these departments have to have a fire department response to any additional calls. Like they could be there in the city, they relocate units, they have a huge department. They don't have that here. So this is one of the factors that I don't think is ever taken into consideration. And, you know, you have to always weigh things, possibility and probability. Okay, the probability might not be that's going to happen, but there's always that possibility, and that's why you have a fire department. So you have to take that in consideration. And again, I want to emphasize your main function or your main duty is to protect these people. And that's my main concern, is the well-being of these people. That should be the only thing the number one thing you take into consideration when you're deciding this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
All right, Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak? You did? Oh. I'm sorry. Oh, you know what, it got mixed up with the other one. Okay. I know, come on up, Linda.
And similar public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Supervisor and members of the board. Again, I'm Linda Agnew. I'm a lawyer with Harris, Bloom & Archer, and I thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak in opposition to the extension of the moratorium. And I also have a memorandum of law that I'd like to submit to the board as to why the moratorium, which we believe was not enacted appropriately and for appropriate reasons in the first place, should not be extended, and how such an extension, quite frankly, is just not going to withstand judicial scrutiny. The applicant submitted its application to the planning board back on May 31st, 2022. At that point in time, BESS facilities were a permitted use within the R60 zoning district. Applicant submits its application in good faith. The planning board holds 6 meetings on it, at least 2 public hearings. The application receives a negative declaration back on October 27th, 2022. It was never challenged by anybody. Not only is it binding upon the planning board, it's binding upon the town board as well. The application also received the appropriate recommendation of approval from the Suffolk County Planning Commission. So what happens next? What happens next is that on the meetings held on April 27th and June 8th, 2023, the board inexplicably refuses to close the hearing. There's no further testimony that's needed. There's no further evidence. They close the hearing. What happens next? We all know what happens next. On August 13th, the moratorium is adopted. It is the applicant's position that the moratorium was ill-adopted out of public concern and fear of the general community, and that's insufficient as a matter of law to support a moratorium. This is not a stopgap measure because the board's not considering a comprehensive plan. The record doesn't establish that there's any emergency or dire situation that requires the enactment of the moratorium. Nevertheless, the board adopts it. And with all due respect, for the next 6 months, very little was accomplished by the town in connection with pursuing it. They failed to retain a consultant. I know that, Councilwoman McNamara has indicated that they've had people there, But one of the things they said they were going to do, and I think somebody in the community indicated that it was a good thing to do, was to get a consultant, not to ban Best Energy, but to see whether or not Best Energy makes sense and it is in fact safe. Board never did that. And they also failed to analyze in any meaningful way any perceived issues with respect to the BESS system. Notwithstanding this lack of action, again, this is a 6-month moratorium. The town extended the moratorium for another 6 months by resolution on February 13th, 2024. And what did the town do? Once again, really virtually very little movement. Still no consultant retained. Still no meaningful analysis of any perceived issues with respect to safety issues of BESS. The applicant has addressed all these issues in connection with safety with the planning board, which is the appropriate vehicle, with its experts whose testimony is basically uncontroverted. And that's what we have here. So now, here we are. And the town is now looking to extend it for another 6 months.
30 seconds.
And again, we believe this is the application, this is the only application affected by the moratorium. I know I only have 30 seconds, I may take 40. None of the above makes any sense in and of itself. But what does make sense is the following. The applicant's application was set to be approved, having had 6 meetings, including 2 public hearings, and having received a negative declaration that is now binding upon all the town boards. Bowing to community pressure, and I understand the town adopted the moratorium. I don't agree with it, but that was the reason why they did it in the first place, was because of community pressure. Having found that BESS systems meet applicable safety standards, the town had pivoted and extended the moratorium in order to put place legislation banning BESS systems within the R60 zoning district. Members of the work session that we've heard, on the public access channels have confirmed that. The moratorium is being extended and extended until the town comes up with legislation to prevent BESS systems within the R60 zoning district. It is the applicant's position that this
3
can't
minutes.
withstand judicial scrutiny. There is no legitimate reason for this board to be extended. The applicant is in compliance with all state regulations governing BESS, and it's time to let the moratorium expire and allow the planning board to make its determination on the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda.
And may I hand up my my memo? I do have enough copies for the board as well as council.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening. I was not planning to speak tonight, so I didn't
Give
put
your
in a
name.
card.
I need your name.
Yeah, my name is Jane Fasulo. I'm a resident of Setauket and East Hampton. My family is mostly in East Hampton, not Setauket, so this is kind of like home grounds for me. And I do understand in trying to get to my family events that it is horrible to get through the roadways through the Shinnecock area. But you have another constraint here, and I liken this to the idea that you can't see the forest through the trees. You need the trees to have the forest, but you must also take into account the forest. So when you ask the question about, is it to the benefit of the people of Hampton Bays to put it in this location? Maybe not, but you do need to answer the question in conjunction with the other towns on the South Fork about what do. You are constrained by energy supply here. The reason the wind farm was so easily pushed through is because there is a lack of energy on the South Fork, the East End. When you take this into consideration with the other towns, you need to really look at it as the whole forest. What is to the benefit of all of the people, not just the people of Southampton? And in that regard, I think you'll understand that BESS, which may or may not be charged with the energy from renewable sources, it may be charged with energy from the grid. But when it is charged with energy from the grid, it does so when the energy is not needed. And it's there when the energy is needed. It can prevent you from having to have another fossil fuel power plant. And if you question the benefits of having something like a BESS system over a fossil fuel power plant, you simply have to go on the internet and do a little research. It doesn't take a lot of time. In that regard, in terms of the moratorium, you've had 6 months. That's a full year. Whether you accept another 6-month moratorium or not, I think you need to determine at the end of that, after 18 months, some kind of a serious decision should be made about what benefits everybody on the East End. Thank you.
The first 6 months was a turnover of 4.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Elaine McPhail, Hampton Bays. I just want to remind the board that when this started, we were still in the throes of COVID, and there were a lot of things that residents didn't know. All townspeople did not know what was taking place, and I'm just very grateful that it came to light by some people and brought the attention to other people so that this wasn't pushed through as quickly as it might have been, because that would have been a major disaster at this point in time. You've slowed down, and I appreciate it, and I hope you just take your time to do what you need to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, I think that's all the comments we have here. And Kevin, you said there's no one on Zoom?
Yes, no one on Zoom.
Okay. Well, we've heard all the comments tonight, and I'd like to give the working group a little bit more time to finish working through the code changes. So I move to close the public hearing, and that's it.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
You don't want to keep it open for written submissions?
No. We had it now.
We have a resolution on tonight.
We do.
Yes.
Okay, thank you everyone for your
Thank you.
input.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice for the 6th public hearing?
Public hearing number 6 for the adoption of an updated pattern book for the hamlet of Hampton Bays.
Do you want to wait and let people leave? 'Cause
Yeah.
we have 3 more public hearings that if anybody wants to stay for, you're welcome to, but.
When do we send out the pizza? That's
I wish it was an hour ago.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great.
Okay, Janice, you're back. Thank you.
Hi, yes.
Janice.
Janice Scherer, Town Planning and Development Administrator. So we just had a work session this past Thursday where we went over the proposed changes. We still have to make those changes, so I recommend just hearing testimony and potentially keeping it open, or
Yeah, I'd like to.
so that we can.
Just a little louder.
At the last work session, we had a lot of comments on the pattern book, and Janice is in the process of getting that revised to reflect our input. So rather than go, make any determinations tonight, we're waiting for the revisions to come. So we're going to hold the public hearing over to the next board meeting, but we'd be glad to take your comments if you'd like. Sure. Thank you.
I do want to say, Janice, before you leave, I just want to, because just so the public understands, we had a work session last Thursday, and we did in that meeting discuss that we are taking all of the reference to heights are being removed from the pattern book, so that it is simply a pattern book of design standards, and anything that versus height or building size will be addressed separately in the any additional code that we.
Yes.
And there's no code in the book now.
Right.
We have to adopt the codes later.
I mean, there's best practices and sort of, scale and proportion.
But no heights.
Take out the height. But as far as block length and the street standards, those would remain, right? Okay.
Pretty much just the design standards, right?
Right.
So the next meeting, the next board meeting is August 13th. Do you think you'd have the revisions by then, or should we put it over to August 27th?
I would say put it to the later one, just because I'm still trying to get all those things amended.
So you know, this public hearing will be adjourned to the August 27th meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I encourage anyone to watch the work session video. Also, there was a couple of graphics that people wanted to be clear that it wasn't necessarily this through road to the park. that's being advocated. It was a feasibility analysis for a type of design. So we'll keep that in the appendices and change that. So, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank
So
you,
we do
Janice.
have a few cards. The first is Neil O'Donnell, and the next after that is Gail Lombardi. You wanna get on deck?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Neil O'Donnell from Hampton Bays, and I'm actually going to read a letter that one of fellow Hampton Bays residents asked me to read in. It's from Mary Payson. As the town has not performed the environmental review required for an amendment to the comprehensive plan, the town technically cannot amend the comprehensive plan at this time. The town has stated that the pattern book is only a guide to architectural design preferences. In light of the above, the town should make the nature and the applicability of the pattern book clear by amending or adding language as a preface to the pattern book. For example, the architectural design elements included in the pattern book are not intended to be used for any purpose other than design. Some of the design elements contained herein may not be feasible due to current zoning or other reasons. The inclusion of such design elements is not to be relied on for zoning or any other purpose, nor should they be interpreted to mean that a zoning change will be permitted or denied. Thank you.
Dan, would you like to hand that letter in? Sure.
Yeah, that's
That way,
good.
because we had a hard time hearing it.
I don't know if Mary will end up getting on Zoom, but she wanted to read that into the record, and I want to echo her comments. So a comp plan addition is a unlisted, I'm my jailhouse attorney is an unlisted item, but it comes with a presumption that there is adverse environmental impacts. But in what Mary's suggesting, and I agree with her, is if right in the preamble you state that this is not intended to be used for zoning other than architectural designs, you kind of preclude the fact that you don't have to go through a whole environmental impact statement or a detail. You still have to do an EIS and probably a negative declaration because it is an amendment to the comp plan. But I know it's late, but this is just, all three public hearings are probably an example of the systemic deficiency in zoning and the comp plan that the town board has had for years. And just adding on all these ad hoc amendments, some are just due to zealots wanting, the climate action plan and being aspirational based on future technology. If you look at the rules of comp plans, it's not supposed to be based on, flying cars someday we're going to have or some technology we're going to have. It's supposed to be based on what could be obtained today. So, this is, I'm hoping, and Michael Iacilli had brought it up in the debates, that you should be looking at taking a breath and doing the comp plan over. Because right now, it's like bastards beyond the point of recognition. You look at one amendment and you look at another amendment. That's not a bad word, right? You look at one amendment and then another amendment, and they contradict each other. And I just want to point out one thing in the massing study, which is in the pattern book right now, when they talked about the massing study. I think it was 160 1,200 square foot apartments. So if you look at that, if you get 3 bedrooms per apartment, that would be about 480 bedrooms. Because you've done this now in a vacuum, and now didn't look at the current statistics, do you realize that there's 3 subdivisions within quarter to a half mile radius of the downtown that is 25, 25, and 5 units, let's say, 5 houses? It equates to over 100 bedrooms already in a small radius. The massing looked at, well, let's add all these other apartments because it benefits the 10-acre property owner, but there's all these other properties that were built. Where are all these cars supposed to go? Where are all you're doing everything in vacuums, all these little silos. So it's time, I think, get through the best mess, adopt this as an architectural pattern book to help the architectural look at the town. The other two things that I would recommend is make it mandatory and make it implementable over a period of time, and find the funding so that the property owners could pay for it. And even recommendations we've heard from certain community members, extend it past the village business east and west, because on the eastern side, Hampton Bays goes from village business right into highway business. But it is still walkable. You could get to Carvel, you could get to King Cullen, you could walk way down. So it could be extended. And going east, going west, we have all the restaurants. You may want to extend it, provide grants, extend the sidewalks, find funding to extend the sidewalks, find funding to
30 seconds.
bury the electric lines. There's plenty you guys could do without looking to only zoning and making it a dense area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marion?
And thank you, Cousin Carol, for bearing with it all. Marion Bowden, Hampton Bays. I have a little confusion, some questions. We're told this is a guide, but if it's a guide, then it's essentially, it sounds in my head like it's essentially meaningless, that it has no force of law. And so I don't understand why we're adopting it. And that part B of that is just, after I've been around the block here about 100,000 times, you get suspicious about certain things when you read them. Does this suddenly, if this concept becomes adopted as a guide, suddenly is it used by developers as a right? It's my right to do this because it says in this guide that I can do it. And that's the kind of stuff that's happened over the years here. Do I trust it? I got as far as page 4. I'll admit I've been a little behind the 8 ball with things in my private life. Page 4, do I trust it? Catch this, see who catches it. You win the prize. The Hampton Bays Downtown District encompasses the geographic area depicted in the adjacent map, bounded by Springville to the east, Ponquag, Squiretown to the west, Good Ground Park Road to the north, Long Island Railroad right of way to the south. No? Okay. Springville is to the west. Ponquag and Squiretown is to the east. So by page 4, we have this whole map. I mean, there's a whole map and everything. That's wrong. So I can't, I just say, what the heck else is wrong? Because I didn't have the time to read all 999 pages. Then Frank Zappone, I call it Frank Zappone's questionnaire. It really wasn't. There was a questionnaire sent out that we could do online. And I remember one question was I think it had about affordable housing. Would you like 20%, 40%, 60%, something like that? If you didn't answer it, say you wanted 100 or you wanted 10, you couldn't move on. You had to pick one, whether it was odious or more odious than most odious, whatever. I didn't like that. But then again, who's reviewed that? I got a brief glimpse, and I never saw a hard copy really, and I saw someone made a plan about a town square in the middle of that block. And I said, wow, has anybody really reviewed this or talked it over with the people? Some people went to a lot of trouble to think of ideas, good ideas. Has anybody checked these to see? Maybe most of them are lousy, but there might be one or two that would be innovative and welcome. And that's another thing. It's zoned village business. Come on, it's village business. It's the main block in Hampton Bays downtown. And I think we've been resolute over the years in saying we do not want housing that's solely housing on that block. And no one has a problem with housing above stores, above lawyers' offices, or what have you. But if the footprint is just for housing, we've been firm. We don't want it. We don't want that in that one block. Now, everybody talks about walkability. What are we going to do for walkability where all the houses are? Peek in the windows of the ground floors to see how clean someone's kitchen is? I mean, it's ridiculous. You can't window shop in an apartment house. And that's the whole idea of this so-called, the ideal. walkability, and window shopping. Their favorite activities, they're what promote businesses. And if there's a lot of residences taking up space, we've lost the potential for business. Okay, I think that's basically, I think it's a great idea, by the way, I think personally, to break up some of the blocks. I don't have a problem with a lot of that. I also would like to see, well, I have some other ideas that I'll try to work up a little better and pass by you. And I just hope, maybe it would be
30
nice
seconds.
if there could be a group of people, and I'd love to work with you, Maria, if you would work with us, because you've been through a lot of this in West Hampton. And so I think your experience is invaluable in helping us move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next is Bob Tyson, and then last but not least, Ray D'Angelo.
Thank you again. I agree with all these folks in what they said. Okay, their main concern seems to be that they agree that this should be a book of architectural suggestions, not code. All right. I viewed the board meeting of, the work session of July 18th work session, as well as reviewing the pattern book. I had a few questions, as well as a couple of comments. They echo what you heard before on July 9th. The opening paragraph says the intro uses the phrase provides standards, and I understand English well. One could interpret that standards are code. A good lawyer could say, hey, I looked at your book. I made a plan. It said these are the standards. I wonder if that would hold up in court. You know, I'm asking a lawyer who understands English as well. Just a thought, okay? That means that anything in the book, either pictures, graphics, diagrams, anything that's written can be implied and interpreted as code. That's what standards mean. I know Councilman Scavone asked Janice at the last meeting about that, and actually, in watching, it didn't appear that she gave an answer. Okay. I realize you may not have the book in front of you, but perhaps you can make note of my concerns and review it at your leisure, and certainly before the next draft is prepared. As I mentioned, the phrase "provide standards" in the introduction should not be there. Okay. In addition, on page 22.
30 seconds.
Not a problem. I'll be there. On page 22, it reads building heights overall 50 maximum, and in addition, stories may be requested to the town board on future zoning. Also authorizing 4-story buildings 50 feet high. On page 34,
3
refers
minutes.
to 2- and 3-story mass, which is contrary to the no 3 stories. It seems to provide a venue for a 3rd story. On page 66, pictures as well as references to maritime mercantile building, 3 to 4 stories, mill building that house the manufacture and storage of goods to be sold. That appears to be okay. Unbelievable. Does that mean that the developers in this district can build 4-story buildings 50 foot tall? Yeah, I mean, I think so too, the way I read it. I heard discussions, and I reviewed page 101. pictures that in graphic seem to indicate that theoretical streets can be accessed directly into Good Ground Park. One on the circle and one a little bit farther down east, okay? I don't think that's legal, you know, just to be correct. There needs to be, this is it, there needs to be a disclosure in the introduction advising that nothing, and I actually like, well, I don't know where that first gentleman was, okay? Thank you very much, yeah. There needs to be a disclaimer in the introduction advising that nothing in the plan book is suggesting anything contrary to existing code. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Is Ray here? He's the last card. There he is.
Nice.
Like magic.
It's like Kramer.
It's nice and cool when I'm getting over here. I'm sorry.
You could probably hear a lot
Ray
better, right?
Ray D'Angelo, Hampton Bays. I know you had it at the work session, but you never invite me to. Again, last time I was here, I read this into the record that, you know, with the Hampton Bay Civic Association's against, and one of them was the 50-foot buildings. You know, we don't want multi-family houses and the connectivity to the park. Now, I don't know if those things are still in there or not. I mean, is this going to be the last hearing on this, and then we're going to have?
We're adjourning until August 27th.
Okay, because we'd like to see what the final thing is, so we can opine about it and everything. I just want you to understand that, and I'm going to relate this to the senior center parking. We need so many things in Hampton Bays. There's not enough parking now, and in the morning, I mean, Montauk Highway is like a parking lot. It goes on and on all the way into East Quogue. I mean, bumper to bumper. And now, because we have the new supermarket, you can't even mail a letter. There's just not enough parking. I mean, and the other issue is about the lack of sidewalks, like on Wakeman Road and Ponquag. We should be able to walk down to the beach. There's so many things that we need in our infrastructure, and we seem like we're so fixated on this downtown overlay district, and it's excluding all these other things that are more pressing. And that's one of my main concerns. I mean, it seems like you guys seem to be a very good board. I mean, you know, we need this other stuff. We need, like, again, the sidewalks, parking. We still don't have anything done about the parking at the senior center. And it's gotten really worse now that we're in the summer season and everything. So, and I also just want to mention, I was reading the East End Beacon, and Janice Shearer is quoted in here. And she comments about density, and that her concern, because they're revamping their comprehensive plan, and she was very concerned about density. You know, it was going to go, well, you said you're going to go from 49 units up to 456 units. And I'm glad to see that she's very concerned where she lives about density, because that's what we're very concerned about, the density in Hampton Bays. And I want to thank you. I think we expect great things from you. You know, like I said, Mr. Pell, we know the previous board, you're going to improve on their performance, and we have a lot of faith in you. Thank you very much.
I'm going to try to get you those sidewalks.
All right. Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak at this public hearing? Okay, then I move to hold over the public hearing to the August 27th meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Take a break here. Thanks, everyone, for all your comments.
Yes, thank you for coming.
I'll be right back.
Only 3 more public hearings to go.
That's crazy.
Could be quick.
Sunday, don't let us do that again. Huh? We'll talk tomorrow.
Run, Forrest, run.
Good night.
you like me to call these room?
We thought we'd wait for TJS to get Don't let us schedule so many public hearings, please.
I can't save you from
I
yourselves.
asked for these at afternoon meetings.
You need to come to terms with
I know,
what
but they
this.
still could have put an afternoon
I
meeting.
did say something, I think.
About what?
The amount of public hearings that we lined up.
Yes, he did.
Talk to Janice though.
While we were doing
Yeah.
it.
I was talking to City about it.
Because you need to ask in advance of scheduling them how many you already have. We have that number at any given time for you. But after the fact, it's too late.
Try to
So can
remember
you
to do
can
that.
you just like yell at us when can you just yell at us? There's already 4 on that night.
I think we did.
I didn't hear it.
There's always, time is of the essence.
Is he up there talking or going for that?
Are we waiting for Tommy John or can we open it?
Go ahead.
Well,
Snooze, you lose.
we just needed a little break. It's been over 3
We'll just let
hours.
Cindy read the public hearing notice.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, go ahead and read the public hearing notice, please.
Public hearing number 7 for the Water Quality Improvement Project, WQIP, requested by the Town of Southampton Highway Department for stormwater remediation for Bay Drive, Hamlet of Hampton Bays.
Do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
He'll be fine.
He's
All
a grown
right,
man.
all right, Jackie, please proceed.
Good evening, Madam Supervisor and Town Council members. I am Jacqueline Fenlon, Community Preservation Director. So we are presenting to you tonight projects that are being proposed by town departments. So the first one, as the notice read, is proposed by the Town Highway Department. This is an application for a water quality improvement project and has requested funding in the amount of $473,000 for the installation of stormwater capture and conveyance system to direct stormwater to a First Defense stormwater treatment system, which is a hydrodynamic separator. It also proposes plantings of native beach vegetation near the bulkhead and hydroseeding of disturbed areas, all to decrease the total nitrogen and pollutants and solids entering Shinnecock Bay from this dead-end road, and known as Bay Drive in the hamlet of Hampton Bays. This was reviewed by the Water Quality Advisory Board, and with thorough review, we requested additional information. We wanted to note that 473 amount did include some of the bulkhead repair and beach access stairs, which would not be appropriate to be funded through water quality. So the Water Quality Advisory Board is recommending to fund this project in the amount of $358,800. I just wanted to note that because some is just routine bulkhead repairs and beach access stairs.
Actually, this is a very good project. People at Hampton Bays would love this. And I remember talking about this when I was a trustee. This project.
Yeah, so this is a situation where existing stormwater flow is untreated, uncaptured,
Goes right into the
unfiltered,
bay.
and then it's hopping basically the bulkhead and going directly into Shinnecock.
Actually, they wrote in it.
I've reviewed this application, and I appreciate the work of the Water Quality Board to parse out the portions of the project that are actually water quality, and put monies toward that good effort. Okay,
They do a really good job.
I support it.
They're very diligent. Thank you.
And is this on for today?
This is not on for funding allocation. This is on for public hearing, but I will follow up with this at the next meeting for
Okay.
funding resolution. Yeah.
I don't have any cards for this public hearing. Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to be heard? Does anybody else on the board have any questions for Jacqueline?
No, it's a good project.
I do have Keith Nasseria here from LK McLean. If you guys have any questions.
Nope.
And I told him, I warned him that it would be a very long meeting.
We don't have any questions, but we're sorry you had to sit through this all.
Is there anything that you feel that is necessary to tell us since you've waited all night?
As far as that project is concerned, we do have.
You have to come up, speak up there, so the microphone picks you up.
As far as Keith Nasiri from McLean Associates, as far as this project is concerned, we do have the DEC, the trustees, and the Department of State permits in place. I have to check my records, see if we have the Army Corps, so this is just
Ready to
about
go?
shovel ready.
Oh, great.
Good.
And the highway department is willing to backfill the rest of the monies required for the bulkheading, and that's really a Charlie question, but.
As far as
Yeah.
I know, it's about 50% for the stormwater quality and
Mhm.
50% for the bulkhead. And as far as I know, the bulkhead does require repairs that they're willing to allocate money towards.
Good.
Okay, well, if no one has any other questions, then I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice for the 8th public hearing?
Public hearing number 8 for the water quality improvement project requested by the Town of Southampton Highway Department for stormwater remediation for Bay Avenue East, hamlet of Hampton Bays.
Good evening again, Madam Supervisor and Town Council member. Sorry, it's been a long night. Jacqueline Fenlon here for Community Preservation Director. This is again a very similar application. This is public hearing number 8. So this is again proposed by the Town Highway Department for a water quality improvement project. Both of these, I will note, were submitted in March of 2024. This one is for in the amount of $467,800, again for the installation of a stormwater capture and conveyance system to direct the stormwater to a First Defense stormwater treatment system. That is a hydrodynamic separator, and it will actively reduce the total nitrogen being discharged into Shinnecock Bay. This is a natural beachfront, so this is an area where we're encountering erosion along the side of the road, and then basically scouring of the natural beach, which people do enjoy walking in Hampton Bays. So we wanted to make sure this project did encompass some native plantings, which they have amended their plans to propose, and then also provide continued beach access in this area. So this is an amount of $467,800, and this is recommended be fully funded at this location.
This is another good project. That area gets a lot of use.
Is there a backflow valve on the hydrodynamic separator?
Ooh, that is why Keith is here.
Because I just remember when we went in and the Water Quality Committee requested that we add that feature.
In this particular case, there isn't one. Given it's not connected to a full upland system, so if the water overtops the revetment in this location, it will just inundate the road anyway, so it's not going to really provide much of a benefit to include it. In most other locations, if it was connected to a system where there were lower lying catch basins up into the watershed, it would prevent the water from backflowing through the system. But in this case, the stone and the treatment system at around the same elevation, so it won't provide
It's an
a major
isolated
benefit.
system.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for answering that. Okay. Is anybody?
I remember the West Hampton one.
Yes, you do.
We were concerned about storm surge from
Yes.
Moneyball.
Was that the Money Bog Canal?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it would go right back up onto Main Street.
Yeah, and then all those are interconnected. So essentially this might flood the system, but it wouldn't flood
Right.
directly up the road from you.
Good.
Yeah, good
All
question.
right, no one has any questions, then we'll check. Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak at the public hearing? No one on Zoom. All right, then, let me just check this.
And again, I'll put the funding resolution on for this, for the next meeting, August 13th.
All right, then I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice for the last public hearing?
Be my pleasure. Public hearing number 9 for the water quality improvement project requested by the Town of Southampton Parks and Recreation Department for Poxabog Golf Course to install an IA sanitary system.
Good evening again, Madam Supervisor
Hello.
and Town Council members. Jacqueline Fenlon, CPF Director. So this is another town project that was proposed by the Parks and Recreation Department. So we have an existing failing and antiquated non-compliant sanitary system at Poxabog Golf Course. So this is proposed to be in the amount of $280,000 for a new IA system. The benefit of this project is we're going to be doing 2 systems. One will be handling the kitchen load with a grease trap. The other system will actually be serving the effluent of the bathroom facilities. So what's nice is we will be treating the nitrogen through the IA system, but then separating the flow. This is one where it will definitely reduce total nitrogen. There is an existing sanitary flow of about approximately 527 gallons per day. This system can meet 800 gallons per day, so it can, meet the existing sanitary flow standards as well as additional expansion if needed. And I did want to say that this actually will improve the pollutants and nitrogen impacting the watersheds. This is an interesting area of Sagaponic Pond, which is directly to the south, and Wainscott Pond and Fairfield Pond, as well as Georgica. So I didn't put Georgica in here because it's not in the town of Southampton, but this is an interesting area where it will basically make a difference for all of those watersheds and water bodies. This is in the amount, again, of $280,000, but at this point, the water quality is only recommending not funding the grease trap because that is directly related to the restaurant and commercial use on site. So that is $4,000. So they recommend funding in the amount of $276,000 for this project.
Is this another good project?
Yeah, the Parks Director apologized for not being able to be here tonight, but she does obviously support this, and there are other upgrades for this facility planned, so this is a good start to those upgrades.
Yeah, Kristen and Daryl apologized they could not be here this evening. But if you have any questions, they said they'd be happy to follow up and provide you with additional information.
We spoke about it briefly at a work session with
Yeah,
them, so.
yeah, they did mention that. I spoke with Kristen this afternoon. So again, this will be on for funding at the August 13th meeting if there's no objections.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions, comments? Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom?
No, you said no one on
Then I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a very good
Thank you,
night. Thank you. Safe travels home.
There might be some another question though about the Dover Park resolution.
Oh, okay.
But rather than
You
have
want
you
wait till we.
stay, we could take it out of order because.
I'm fine with that.
Sure, let me.
You want to make a motion?
Sure, which one it is.
We have to do public portion.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
You want to do public portion?
that brings us to the public portion. Is there anybody who would like to speak at the public portion?
Okay,
All right then.
Anybody on Zoom?
we've heard from
Anyone
the
on
people.
Zoom,
Okay.
Kevin, for a public portion?
Yay.
They went to sleep.
Move to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Was that page 40?
Yeah, there was just some flurry of emails, so I just wasn't clear on where we were here. So, Madam Clerk, I move to take Resolution 917 out of order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So this is let's say, Town Board Resolution 2024-917 to recall and amend Resolution 2024-861 as it relates to the adoption of negative declaration. Okay, so could you talk to us about what's happening, because there were some emails too about, what was required for this.
Yeah, so this is the mandatory local law that we adopted on the July 9th meeting. We had conferred with Janice Shearer and Land Management about having a simultaneous secret resolution. Unfortunately, that did not make it on the calendar, so our local law and our proposition basically made findings about seeker being done under a separate resolution. This is actually literally just amending it to say that they've looked at the secret. So I'll just read the additional language in here, and there was a strikeout on whereas number 3. Actually, I guess that's 6, actually, sorry. But the additional information that we're adding is really, I spoke with Janice, and Janice actually conferred with Jim Burke and Kathleen, basically stating that instead of doing a separate resolution, what we'd be doing is amending the local law and the findings within the local law adoption resolution, but it does not change the substance of this local law. It is all the same, the proposition is the same, but it's just making sure that we make secret findings within that, and it's combining the resolution instead of having 2 separate resolutions. So I'll read the addition in, whereas the town board has conducted a review of the information contained in the environmental assessment forms part 1 and 2 and a negative declaration form prepared by the Department of Land Management, and whereas the magnitude and importance of potential impacts have been considered by the town board, now therefore be it resolved. So we had actually noted that SECRA was going to be adopted on July 9th, which is why that one part is stricken. So whereas on July 9th, we're striking that, and then including resolve that the town board hereby adopts a negative declaration to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, Chapter 157. So it's just really clarifying that language because we didn't have the accompanying secret resolution. Yeah.
Okay.
But everything remains the same. And I did speak with the mayor today. They are proceeding with the harvester on Dozier Park, which requires this alienation. We also conferred with Fred Thiel. So we're proceeding with the mandatory referendum pursuant to our town code when there is a matter of discontinuance of parkland.
So we'll go to a referendum.
We're going to a public referendum.
And
Yep.
can the village move forward before the public referendum?
No, they cannot
Right, so
move
they have
forward
to-
with the algae harvester.
Yeah. Okay.
The substance of the alienation legislation that was passed by a state legislator specifically stated that the alienation was for the algae harvester. Yeah. So now
Okay.
we are
November.
proceeding with putting it on Dozier Park. And then I will present to you, we did receive a new plan, so I can also present that to you at a later date so that you guys can review a plan that we just received, but it's still located on Dozier Park, which is that park just to the east of Agawam Park.
All right, so we'll look at that at a later date.
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah, but this is clarifying the secra, just to make sure that we did the proper secra designation and findings.
It's an exciting project.
Yeah.
And we're putting considerable amount of water quality monies towards it, and they also got federal monies for the
Yes.
project too.
Yeah, I believe we put approved funding allocation in approximately $5.3 million for the algae harvester itself. And then obviously we purchased Dozier Park, so we'll allow the temporary alienation of this property for the water quality use. And then we're purchasing 137 Pond Lane, which is the swap of equal, and I would emphasize greater value than Dozier Park, which is on the west side of Agawam. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's 13 million for that. 13.25 million. 13.25. Right there. Pond. Yeah. Yes.
What are you saying?
13.
For the total?
137
No, for
Pond
the-
Lane.
just for the parcel to swap with
Got it.
Dozier.
Just to purchase the swap, it's $13.25 million for the purchase of 137 Pond Lane.
Okay.
Yep, and we are currently in contract. That public hearing was held before Michael and Maria and Bill took office, but we are in contract and we are ready to close after the public referendum results.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So I believe we have a motion and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Who's the second?
We didn't have a motion in a second.
Who seconded?
Bill,
Nobody.
Billy.
I did.
Georgia?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was it.
Yeah. All right, so let's get started with the resolution. Town Board Resolution 2024-879, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, to accept and award and authorize the supervisor to execute any and all documents for the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority Clean Energy Community Program Points 5,000 based grant for the purchase and installation of solar panels on the town hall.
Second.
And this was revised as we discussed at the review. All in favor?
Aye.
And Madam Clerk, may I co-sponsor?
Sure.
Thank you.
Town Board Resolution 2024-880.
Could we, I'm sorry, Bill.
Take a moratorium out of order.
I want to just mention here that what's outlined in this resolution, actually. The
a
previous
good
one
one.
that we were just looking at, 879. So I think it's important to mention that, we were designated, with a 3-star designation from NYSERDA as being a community leader in clean energy. We are working in that direction, and I think it's important to just note that this is work that we're collectively putting together so that we can keep this up. And I'm really proud that we're actually moving this
Except
resolution.
you are looking at another solar farm.
We're looking at building more, solar.
You got
Absolutely.
the 3-star designation, that's what you're referring to?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Mhm.
So we are working toward, what we just want to emphasize, we are working toward achieving our climate goals.
We've worked hard at that for years. So 5,000 points is a lot to
Thank you.
accumulate. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Sorry, Bill.
That's right. I'll continue. Town Board Resolution 2024-880. Amend 2020 authorized funding for Peconic Escrow Partnership from Community Preservation Fund water quality monies.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-881, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, to authorize the 2024 contributions to Volunteer Ambulance Worker Trust Fund.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-882, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, to authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Magnet Forensics LLC for digital evidence analysis tool and platform subscription services for the town police department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-883, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, to authorize the supervisor to execute a 2024 grant agreement with Suffolk County for the enhanced DWI enforcement program.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Town Board Resolution 884 of 2024, co-sponsored with Councilman Pell, authorize the supervisor to sign a 2024 contract in support of the trustees and freeholders of the commonalty of the town of East Hampton for water quality protection strategies. And as I indicated in the work session, this is for the ongoing testing of Sag Harbor Inner Cove areas, upper and inner cove areas.
Thank you. Bill, did you second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. 2024-885, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Stenton for awards of Community Preservation Fund, 20% water quality improvement project fund for Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Town Board Resolution 886 of 2024, authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Citizen Science Learning Incorporated to obtain weekly samples from freshwater bodies through the Adopt a Pond program to monitor harmful algal blooms and perform seasonal analysis for nitrogen and phosphorus compounds.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 887 of 2024, award and authorize the purchase of a 2022 Ford Ranger from Otis Ford, Inc., using the New York State OGS contract for vehicles Class 1-8 statewide.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-888, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, to award and authorize the purchase of a 2024 Chevrolet Tahoe from McGuire Motors LLC using the New York State OGS contract for vehicles Class 1-8 statewide.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
Town Board Resolution 889 of 2024, to recall and amend the Town Board Resolution number 2023-395, award and authorize the supervisor to sign contract for security camera network infrastructure maintenance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-890, to recall and amend Town Board Resolution number 2024-849, the award, and authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Arcadis of New York, Inc. for the municipal sewer engineering services for Phase 1, 30% design of the Riverside Sewer Improvement Project. This is just to correct a typo.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-891, co-sponsored with council members McNamara, Schiavone, and Pell, to reject all bids for professional services for the design of a constructed wetland in Riverside.
Second.
And on the motion, this is just for clarification, because I was asked about it. This is, we were going to do a constructed wetlands for the STP, and we are now doing everything on site for that design, so this is no longer needed.
Thank you for the clarification. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-892, co-sponsored with council members Pell and Schiavone, 2024 notice to bidders for Sagaponic and Bridgehampton Beach Erosion Control District Nourishment Project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-893, which is a 2024 notice to respondents for professional architectural engineering and surveying services.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-894, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, to amend the 2024 adopted budget for the Citizen Science Project restricted account.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-895, to amend the 2024 adopted budget for Park Department vehicle.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-896, co-sponsored with Councilman Pell, to amend the 2024-2028 capital budget and add capital project Mill Farm Diamond Court Road improvements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-897, to amend the 2024-2028 capital budget for transportation trailer project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-898, to authorize the general fund pay-as-you-go to purchase trash cans for recyclables.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-899, to authorize payment to Lyro Engineers, Inc. for professional services related to the asbestos project design and monitoring for 20 Shinnecock Road, Hampton Bays.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's Bel Air.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bel Air. We need
That's
that.
just to change the account.
It's coming close.
Town Board Resolution 2024-900, to authorize the settlement of a Suffolk County Department of Health matter ENF-23-0035-EE for site number SITE-13083-OPC.
Good job.
Second.
Wow. That's a lot.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Town Board Resolution 901 of 2024. This is historic landmark designation of the structure recognized as the Grosvenor Atterbury Estate House located at 520 Montauk Highway, Shinnecock Hills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Town Board Resolution 902 of 2024, release of maintenance bond for bridge facilities.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-903, to terminate an employee in the General Services Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-904, to appoint Eliza Morgan to the Affirmative Action Officer in Human Resources.
Second. And congratulations.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Eliza. Town Board Resolution 2024-905, to accept the resignation of Christopher Scotto, laborer in the Municipal Works Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-906, to appoint Brian Conway to Heavy Equipment Operator in Municipal Works.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-907, to appoint David Roche to Maintenance Mechanic 4 in the Parks Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town
Aye.
Board Resolution 2024-908, to appoint Paul Gubista to the Maintenance Mechanic 2 position in the Parks Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-909, to appoint William Hydeck to the Engineering Aid position in Municipal Works.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-910, to appoint Deidris Matonis to Maintenance Mechanic 4 in Community Preservation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-911, to appoint Police Officer Brandon Jensen, starting position.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Town Board Resolution 2024-912, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, to authorize the hiring of Luis Morales, Police Officer Spanish-speaking list, starting position.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And congratulations to all our new
Yeah.
employees and welcome.
Town Board Resolution 913 of 2024, a notice of public hearing to consider historic landmarks designation of the structure recognized as the James Tuthill Family House home located at 126 South Country Road, Remsenburg, Suffolk County Tax Map number 900-368-3-16.002.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that will be held on August 13th. Town Board Resolution 2024-914, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, to accept a grant of the conservation easement for 1030 Noyak Path LLC for property to be maintained as open space, Suffolk County Tax Map number 900-35-2-37.4, located at Water Mill pursuant to Southampton Town Code Section 244-4, obtaining a development right certificate, and Section 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 2024-915, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, to accept a deed of a residual fee from Joseph F. Gaza for properties to be maintained as open space located at North Sea, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 900-63-4-44 and 900-78.1-1-36. Pursuant to Southampton Town Code, Section 244-4, obtaining a development right certificate, and Section 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
Second.
All in favor?
I think that was the whole resolution.
Yeah.
I know.
Right. The tax map numbers are usually at the end. Town Board Resolution 916 of 2024, a resolution accepting a trail, viewshed, and conservation easements in connection with the site plan / wetlands permit of Atlantic Golf Course in the hamlet of Bridgehampton.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town, hey, that's the last one, we did that one. All right, now we just have to walk on. All right. Town Board Resolution, ID number 46825, adopting and amending the Town Code Article 24 regarding the Central Pine Barrens.
Second.
This is what we talked about in
it's
work
important.
session, so it mirrors the Pine Barrens Commission rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution ID 46992, resolution setting a public hearing to consider amending Town Code Chapter 330-185 as it relates to the procedure for change of zone applications.
Second.
Just for so the board knows, this was actually, I wanted this to be an add-on on Friday, but due to staffing, it didn't make it on as an add-on. Just so you are aware, from our work session, the changes that were made to this are that the town board decides on the town board decides on the procedure through policy, so it's not in the code, so it can change. And also, it sets a 30-day time limit for when the application is received, so that the applicant within 30 days either receives a notice from the planning department that it doesn't, the board is not going to schedule a public hearing for whatever reason, being it doesn't meet zoning, the comprehensive plan, whatever the issue is, or they will get scheduled for a work session within that 30-day window.
Well, it's a good thought to move things along so they don't get lost in the shuffle or languish.
So those were the changes.
Yeah.
Based on the feedback from our last work session. I'm happy to have another work session.
We want to have
Yeah,
the
we
work
should-
session.
we're gonna have another work
with
session.
Janice, so we can
Because
have
there
it
were
on
some concerns
either
about it.
August 1st
Yeah.
or August 8th.
Okay.
It's on for August 13th.
13.
What do you
Oh,
think?
not for the
work
public
session.
hearings, 13th, yes.
So maybe we put it on, well,
We have 3 weeks before the next.
yeah. Okay. Put it on for August 1st then. Town Board Resolution
We
ID.
did vote.
Oh,
Sure you want to put it on before the work
I
session?
do.
You do? You want to? Okay. Because there may be some changes.
There
that,
could be
like,
changes.
and then we're
we
forced
just
to
have
be,
to renotice it if there's substance.
I think we should wait till after the work session. So it's double work,
It's not
then we have to have another public hearing, be here until 12 o'clock.
I mean, we'll,
That's why it's on for an afternoon meeting.
if it is on, if there are substantive changes, we just have to renotice. Did someone second it? I don't recall.
You did.
I did. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What are we voting for? I'm
We're
sorry.
voting
Setting a public hearing.
Set the public hearing, but we're gonna have a
I'm
work
not
session
against the
on
public hearing. I
Thursday.
think we should have the work session first.
I agree with Tommy.
This thing has
No,
languished
not
for over a year now, and we've got 2 work sessions on it, and I just really want to move it forward. I made changes based on the input of this board, and you guys made in March. The policy for doing this is set by policy, not by code, so it doesn't constrain future boards, and it gives the applicant a 30-day time frame in which we need to act instead of these things languishing for months and months and months.
All things I would love to hear in a work session.
Yes.
And we can do it at the work session
Yeah.
on August, either the 1st or the 8th.
What's the? I'm sorry, I'm just a little unclear of what the
Well,
hesitation
it's
is.
always preferable to have a work session before you schedule something for public hearing, because then if there's changes, you just end up having to reschedule the public hearing, renotice it. We did have one work session on it, and then revisions were made based on those comments, but
Right.
I feel as though we're gonna get more comments to the draft.
It's fine, if you want to put it off again, it's just another month out.
All right, if everybody would be more comfortable with that, then let's.
Then I will withdraw the resolution.
So noted. Withdraw. Put it back on it? No, put it on the next agenda. But we will schedule the work session. Okay, thank you for your work on this, Councilwoman McNamara. This is important, we really do need to
Yes, it is.
get some
But it has
processes
to be
in
right.
place for that. Town Board Resolution ID number 46997 to promote Sergeant Carl Schottenhamel to the rank of lieutenant in the Southampton Town Police Department.
Second.
All
I would
in
like to
favor?
co-sponsor. I'm sorry, say that again? I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
I would too, please.
Michael?
Oh, is everybody on it? Sure. I'll add
Okay.
that.
I don't want you to be left out.
Thank
You are
you.
now,
Thank,
except
thank
me.
you, Madam Clerk.
Well, congratulations to our
Congrats.
new
Yes.
lieutenant.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor too.
I thought you were.
I
already.
thought you were on it.
No, I just
Oh,
seconded.
okay.
Congratulations,
Of course.
Lieutenant.
Did we
Yes.
vote, Sunday?
No.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution ID 47005, notice of public hearing to consider amending Town Code Chapter 312 Vehicles and Traffic, amending and adding parking prohibited in designated locations regulations on a portion of County Road 80, Montauk Highway, East Quogue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This one, though, we should also have the.
There's really nothing to discuss because it's a county road and they have requested this, so. And the highway department has supported it, the town engineer has supported it. Currently, people's driveways are being blocked and it's an issue with, I can briefly tell you what it is. There's a deli in East Quogue and the county had us remove the parking across the street because they didn't want people crossing the road. And since then, it has caused a major issue with the sight distance from the road that is next to the deli and people's driveways getting blocked. And so the county has decided it would be safer to have the parking across the street where all the contractors that would go to the deli were parking. The deli owner has also requested that we put the parking back because restricting parking there has significantly impacted his business, and the county has agreed to move it back to the other side of the street.
When you say the county, and of course I believe
Alex
everything you're
Brigham.
saying, but I'm just saying, did they give us anything in writing for the file, or is this just a verbal?
I have an email chain from them I can share with the board.
Oh, excellent. Then we don't really need a work.
It's pretty.
We're just setting the public hearing.
Yes.
Setting the public hearing.
We haven't completely voted yet.
All in
Just saying.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Town Board Resolution ID number 47006, notice of adoption of local law to amend Chapter 314 of the Town Code entitled Moratorium on Battery Energy Storage Systems by amending Section 314.4 entitled Moratorium Period to extend the moratorium period for an additional 6 months.
Can I before we?
I need a second, and then you can.
Oh, well,
Second.
Second.
Cindy second.
Does it? This is a question to council. Does it have to be 6 months, or is that flexible?
Right now,
The moratorium itself.
right now, yes,
Right? Why right now?
because that's what we extended it for.
That's the resolution before us.
Okay.
If we get it done earlier, we get it done earlier. But right now, we're extending it for 6 months.
Yes, but we already have 2 meetings with people scheduled for public input, in August and then September, and then we'll need one more at least, and then the governor's recommendations are coming out, so we definitely want to get it done, I'm hoping by year end.
And then it's going to come back to us.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
it's
know,
a
then more public
recommendation.
hearings
Instead of our
on.
own processes, which, so 6 months.
I know the
We're
great
not
work
ready.
that the steering committee is doing, and I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of effort that's being put into it. One thing that I'd like to just point out, however, is that there's, I think, agreement between the neighbors and the concerned constituents, and also the battery storage folks who would like to see this move a little bit more quickly. And I'm not saying that we should be taking our time, absolutely 100%, because this is very important, and I see where a lot of these residents are coming from in terms of their concerns in residential communities. But I also recognize too that even during the first moratorium, we were receiving emails from the constituents saying this is taking a very long time.
Mhm.
So I'm just
Yeah. But I think
trying
that-
to have us think about the timeline here.
I think now they appreciate, after having watched the meetings that we've had,
And
that we are
participated.
trying to work through,
Yeah,
the
happy.
issues to make ourselves comfortable.
Okay.
And
And-
I just wanted to note there was a Scribner's error that's been corrected in its proper form, so
This
there's
is-
no issue.
This is the third one.
Thank you.
Third?
This would
Yes.
be the third.
Third.
We did have a change.
And
We also did have
we-
a change in
Significant
this
change in
entire
the board and,
yes, in the
and
process.
so,
So,
people getting up to speed and doing the right thing. It's important.
You need a second?
We have one.
Cindy seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution ID number 47011 to approve the warrant number 14, the capital number 14, CPF number 14, dated July 23rd, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Town Board Resolution ID number 47017, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone, to a resolution authorizing the supervisor to submit a grant application to the Justice Department for a body-worn camera program to be implemented by the Southampton Town Police Department.
Second. Oh, sorry. That's
Second?
your resolution.
That's all right. It's a good
All
one.
in favor?
Aye. And I'd like to
And-
co-sponsor, Madam Clerk. Thank you so much.
And I'd
Myself
like
too.
everyone to note in the fourth whereas, it's a 1-to-1 match. So,
so there needs to be funding in place.
Huh?
So there needs to be funding in place.
What do you mean by that? You mean it's 100% funding, or is it, we have to match it?
it has to be a match it.
Huh?
1-to-1.
Yeah.
We going back to an earlier discussion on different
Want to have a work
grants, which is
session?
a great thing. What's that?
Do you have a work session?
No, not on this. Heck no.
You better stop
But-
where you're ahead.
What's that?
You better stop where you're ahead.
So we're getting 2,000 and we need to put in 2,000.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
we can deal
Right.
with that.
Per. And it's a good thing. We're getting grant
Yes.
monies. We wear body
$2,000?
cameras.
It could be safety
Yeah.
for the officers.
Is that the right amount, $2,000?
10 o'clock. Come on, let's get it closed by 10 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.